them to live on their own terms. No one should face a battle alone. Join us at woundedwarriorproject.org.
The radio home for Philadelphia Flyers hockey. WENJ, WENJ HD Millville, Atlantic City, 97.3 ESPN. This is the Sports Bash with Mike Gill on 97.3 ESPN. Now, live inside the Matt Black Kia Studios, here's Mike Gill.
And the Sports Bash is live on a Wednesday edition here on 97.3 ESPN, the free mobile app. And don't forget, watch the show live on our website, 973ESPN.com. I'm your host, Mike Gill. That's Hunter Brody. Josh Henning's producing today's show. You out there, hopefully you're enjoying your last day without snow, because apparently people are going to get dumped on in the next couple of days. Is that what you're hearing?
That is what I'm hearing, yes. And I don't know how to feel about it because I love snow, but at the same time, I slipped and hurt my back.
Still hurt?
Oh, yeah. I'm not having fun with this whole falling on black ice and shoveling. But I do love the snow, so I'm torn.
I'm out on the snow. I don't care if I ever see snow again. That's how I feel about that.
But you love it when you watch football in it, right? Or you don't really
too much for me.
No, like when you watch an NFL game, it's week 7, week 8, random in the middle of the week, and it's all snow. It's fantastic.
When do you see a week 7 game?
I don't know. I just meant middle of the season. Maybe more like week 13.
Playing a game in Alaska?
Yeah, maybe. That would be nice. All right, let's push it back a little
Greenland?
bit. Shame on me. Week 13. All right, week 13. I apologize.
7, 6, 15.
Does it matter the week or does it matter the snow?
Sometime after Thanksgiving is when you get the snow
Okay,
game.
You're too focused on the win. I'm talking about watching the guys run out there on the turf with the snow.
Oh, boy. Well, I don't need any snow. That's what I know. So we had no Flyers last night because of the COVID, but we got a good Sixer game last night. And I can tell you, I don't know, did you stay up for the whole Sixer game? You're a young guy. You did.
I did do that.
I thought it was one of the more impressive wins of the year.
Really?
Yeah. What about you?
I thought it was.
Not that impressed.
No, I'm not that impressed, but I'm not going to knock them for winning either. I thought they needed to make some plays in the fourth quarter. The defense in the second quarter was atrocious. The Kings' defense as a whole was embarrassing.
What did Nadu tell us yesterday?
Yeah, brutal.
He said they're probably statistically one of the worst defenses ever.
30th in the league right now. We thought Brooklyn was bad. They're 27th. So this team was 30th. And the Portland Trailblazers, who they see, is 29th. They see them next.
Wow. So, yeah, well, sometimes you just kind of get into the pace of, like, your opponent.
Definitely.
And I think the third quarter and the fourth quarter, I think the Sixers said, we're not going to play your pace anymore.
I thought Ben Simmons had a tough time with De'Aaron Fox. Not that he's easy to defend, but
it's not a great matchup for a guy like Ben Simmons.
I know, but I'm saying Ben is it's weird to see him like that. It's almost uncommon.
Well, I mean, it's weird the fact that we think that Simmons should be able to stick with De'Aaron Fox. That's the weird part. The guy's 6'10".
I know, but he
De'Aaron
sticks
Fox is like he's like Allen Iverson out there. Can you imagine thinking to yourself, that's how good Ben Simmons is that at 6'10", we think that he should be able to handle De'Aaron Fox. That's like saying, hey, I think that Dikembe Mutombo should essentially guard Allen Iverson.
Yeah, but it's different because Ben Simmons doesn't have the same.
That's how good Ben Simmons is. That's how unbelievable of an athlete that he is, that at 6'10", we anticipate that he does have the foot speed and the ability to stay with a guy who has the speed and quickness of Allen Iverson. I mean, when you're watching De'Aaron Fox out there, he's Allen Iverson's speed. His explosion is unbelievable. I mean, maybe he's like a snippet behind Allen, but like he's more in the Iverson speed and explosion, and yet we think that Ben Simmons should be able to handle him.
But he can. I think he could do a better job than he did last night on him. I don't think it was his best performance defensively. And, of course, I'll credit De'Aaron Fox for that. But I do believe that Ben Simmons can give you more than he did last night.
That's a tough matchup.
Sure it is.
If you were going in a 7-game series and you had De'Aaron Fox, the problem that the Sixers essentially have is they don't have a great – well, they do, Ben Simmons. They don't have a traditional on-ball defender. Ben Simmons is their on-ball defender. The problem is you get a guy, and they've had problems like this in the past, when they match up with a guy like Kyrie Irving when he was with Boston. Ben Simmons being 6'10", He has the length, but those particular guys who are on that next level of speed, he's fast, but he doesn't have the foot speed and quickness to keep up with that level of guy. That's where they have problems. Remember the one year where they played Brooklyn, and Brooklyn has all those guards, and the Sixers just don't have a guy to kind of take the ball handle at, because Ben Simmons is your on-ball defender, and if you have those quick guards, he has a little bit of problems with them.
Yeah, you see that all the time still. I mean, there's still guards that have some explosive nights sometimes, and yeah, Dinwiddie was the one that consistently went off against them, and every time they played a guard. And I also think not so much just Ben specifically, but the way that Brett Brown utilized that defense where he would sag the big man back, that would allow the guards to get in that soft pocket area, and they would constantly have that mid-range game. So I think scheme also was a big reason why you had some of those guards do the damage that they did.
Yeah, I mean, look, the point you're making is valid. Like, yeah, Ben Simmons, we anticipate that he should be able to defend. I kind of felt going in he was going to have a tough night at the office. Now, not the whole night, but he just can't play at that level against a player like Fox all night long. A lot of people don't see Fox, but man, he is explosive.
Matisse didn't have an issue with him, not in that fourth quarter.
You know, it's funny that you say that, because I was watching that game late in the game, and Matisse, and you almost get to the point. Remember last week I had kind of like this come to Jesus moment where I'm like, I'm not trading Ben Simmons for Harden. Like I've changed my mind on whether I would do that. Thibault, I'm not saying is Ben, but he's almost in that category now where he's such a valuable piece to just say, I'll just get rid of him because he doesn't score. It's almost like, do I really want to think about doing that? Do I really want to just get rid of Matisse Thybulle because he's not a great shooter? What he brings defensively to this team, and let's be honest, Brodes, if they're going to win a championship, if they're going to be in that conversation, it's not because they're this explosive offense. It's because they're well-rounded offensively, but they have something the other teams don't. They play a defense at another level. Milwaukee doesn't do that. Brooklyn certainly doesn't do that.
I just wonder, though, because you got to give a little to get a little. And we talked about Kyle Lowry, for example, where you would still have that defensive intensity and you would be able to add a little bit more on the offensive side as well, where if you do bring a guy in like Lowry and say it does cost you Matisse Thybulle, I'm sure that there's people banging on the table right now saying, no, there's no way in hell, because you're very emotional after the most recent game. There's people screaming that we need to get rid of Danny Green after last night's game when Danny Green carried Seth Curry for the last 3 games. It's ridiculous how each game has this whole new narrative to it. But I think Kyle Lowry would be a good example, though, because you will benefit and you would still have that defense, and you're going to have to give up a little bit for it. Would you be anti that move, hypothetically?
No, I mean, I understand if you're getting a player of that magnitude, a Kyle Lowry, somebody who, Oladipo, those guys who are all like the lower level all-star player, not the superstar, not the perennial all-star, the guy who makes the all-star game kind of here and there. Those guys, yeah, you got to give a little bit more. So those guys I think I would be okay with. I'm talking about if you're getting like the 1-year guy who's going to just come in and have like a role, like be the role player, because he scores more. We're so enamored with scoring. And in the league today, we're so enamored with 3-point shooting. And it's like, well, if I could find a 3-point shooter and I could trade, like people are willing to trade Thybulle to get back a player who could shoot better threes than he can. That's just the mindset that most fans have. Where I'm watching him last night thinking to myself, how do you think about getting rid of this guy? How do you do it?
You get something back in return that's valuable. That's the only way you think about doing it. But I'm with you. If you're getting that guy who's going to give you 15 minutes off the bench, 12 minutes off the bench, and he's like a Wayne.
How about JJ Redick? What if I told you were trading Thybulle to get JJ Redick?
I think you have JJ Redick's role already filled. So I personally don't think I would do that. I think you have that filled in Danny Green and Seth Curry, and I don't love it, but I know Doc Rivers will utilize it. Furkan Korkmaz, you have the 3 guys. You need a 4th spacer that does something that 3 guys already do. So me personally, I think you already have that role.
Yeah, I said before, I wouldn't give up anything to get Redick. And like, if he was available and he wanted to come here, just schlep rock in here at like the veterans minimum once he becomes a buyout or something, at that point, maybe I think about him, but I'm not giving up anything of value. I'm not giving up Thybulle. I'm certainly not giving up
I think a guy you were speaking about maybe was like a Terrence Ross Would you give up a Matisse Thybulle for like a one back stretch of a Terrence Ross?
No, I don't think so.
Right. But I think that's the kind of the category you were thinking about when it's like, I'm not going to give anybody up for this veteran guy who comes in just because he shoots better than maybe some.
I think Thybulle is, look, he has room to grow as an offensive player. But right now, I don't think Doc Rivers is even saying to him, he's probably like, don't worry about your offense. That's what you're not here for that. Like, we need you to be this guy. This is what we need from you right now. So, yeah, would it be nice? Don't worry about that aspect of your game right now. You're a young guy. We got plenty of time to work on that. Worry about your defense and what that does to help this team out to win games.
I just wonder if it limits your rotation because do you have to make sure other guys are off the floor when he's on the floor just because of spacing purposes? Do you have to make sure that when Matisse Thybulle is out there, you have X, Y, and Z out there as well because of the lack of spacing when we talk about playoff basketball? I wonder how Doc Rivers is going to utilize this rotation. And I also wonder, how long can you play him? If you play him 35 minutes, 30 minutes, do you get the same impact that you do at 22? Is he so successful because you get him in spurts more so than sticking him on one of those top tier guys all game long? Do you know what I mean?
Yeah. Well, and Thybulle gives you the versatility to not have to use Ben all the time. That's the one thing I like about when I was
Danny
watching.
Green.
Yeah, and Danny Green to some extent, but I think Thybulle's a better defender than Danny Green is, and he's a more athletic defender. Thybulle can get into defending guards. I don't think Green is a guy who you can use against a guard all night.
That's a good point. Yeah, for sure. But
there's a difference.
Oh, for sure. No doubt.
Like that's like saying, hey, I want you to defend De'Aaron Fox for Danny Green to defend De'Aaron Fox. It's going to be a tough day at the office.
But Danny Green was defending James Harden. I was thinking about that last night when I was because people were
Harden's not he's more of a wing guy.
For sure. But I just think it's crazy that you have the ability for a whole half to put Danny Green on James Harden. The fact that that's a possibility where it's not a disaster is pretty damn impressive for what this team, because then you could put Ben Simmons on a Kevin Durant. Think about how big that is.
It is. And look, I thought last night they kind of got into the Kings game. No, keep in mind, this isn't the same Kings team. They had won like 4 or 5 in a row. This is a much better Kings team. And you had a night where Buddy Hield, who has not shot the ball all that well this year, he's feeling it from 3 last night. Fox was obviously a tough matchup for everybody, but this Sixers team in general. But I thought they got into the Kings game plan and then got out of it and made the Kings play their game. And their defense just absolutely took that game over in the second half. But, I mean, again, I don't know that it shows up in the box score, but I thought Simmons was another huge factor last night in that game, because it was a night where, by the way, in Joel Embiid, I was watching this game and I was thinking about our conversation about the whole process and the people who hated it and they didn't win a championship yet. And I said, can you imagine if we didn't get to watch this guy? Some of the stuff that he does is just unbelievable, that we are going to get to watch this guy for the next X amount of years do this. And it's unbelievable. But I really thought that he wasn't as big of a factor last night at times. I mean, he just makes, like, he has Buddy Hield on him. What the hell's Hield going to do? And he just kind of crosses Hield over, does a fadeaway jumper from the foul line. It's like, dude, this guy's 7'2", 250 pounds, and he does that to you.
It's beautiful to watch. It really is. And I actually tied our conversation with Uran Weitzman yesterday because I saw he went to the free throw line and he was kind of hanging on his knees. And I'm pretty sure it was Tobias Harris who gave him one of those, like, hit his chest and told him to, like, kind of like, hey, make sure you're standing upright. Almost as if we talked about the posture thing, which I thought was really interesting in his article. And it was almost as if we saw that happen last night, where he was huffing and puffing, hands on the knees on the side, on the free throw line, waiting to get the ball. And Tobias Harris kind of fixed his posture up a bit. And I just kind of tied that all together. And I thought also, Embiid's the leader. We know that. For Tobias to kind of also hold Joel Embiid accountable, knowing what he needs to do. It's like, yo, Joel, you got to do this. I love that part that Tobias Harris is now stepping up on the floor, being that more of a physical leader as well.
Well, look, Embiid, the way he's playing, I've said this for the last 2 years with Embiid. I think Embiid can be the best player on the best team that wins a championship. He might not have been that guy or ready to be that guy 2 years ago, that guy last year. But you're now, because a lot of people thought, oh, you can't win with a big man. You can't win the championship
I questioned
and have
it.
the big guy be your guy. And it's like, look, the guy's 24 years old. He's barely played any basketball in his life. Let the guy play. Let him make some mistakes. Let him learn the game. And I think you're seeing the fruits of that labor right now. But, I thought Simmons last night, again, controlled almost the whole fourth quarter. He didn't have what did he have last night? 14 points.
Yeah, he had 9 in the first quarter.
Yeah, he was aggressive, Ben, early, but then he kind of got out of that.
Which pisses me off.
He had 14 points, didn't score a whole heck of a lot, but, he had the 9 assists. But late in that game, I saw people, they're playing 4-on-5. I was like, I don't think people understand what he's doing out there. Like, if you watch Ben, just watch him without the ball, even when he doesn't have the ball in his hands, where he's just kind of pointing to people, telling them where to go, get the spacing, do that. He just directs the whole thing. It's pretty interesting to watch him when he doesn't have the ball, because a lot of times you'll be watching him and it looks like he has no idea where he's supposed to be. Sometimes you're like, dude, get out of the way. It's almost like he doesn't know where to go. But there's these other times when he has the ball and he's just so patient with everything he does. And it just sets up these baskets that end up being just, if you're the Kings, just a frustrating basket, because you're like, how did that guy get so open? And it's like, well, because Simmons just lulled your whole defense to sleep. And
every team lulls that defense to sleep.
Yeah, well, yes, they do. But I'm saying that just something that he does so well. And I don't think people appreciate that all that much, because it's not like this great skill that you take notice of is, man, this guy's really patient with the ball, with his back to the basket, drawing defenders to him and finding guys. But it's like, man, there's that open layup again. There's an open cutter coming down. There's an open. And I was like, man, this guy is just – I'm really enjoying watching Simmons here in this last month. I'll tell you that.
He's been playing, yes, compared to what he was earlier in the season when he was frustrating and he was making us rip our hairs out. There's no doubt about it that this is a different version of Ben Simmons. And if this is the version you can get later on, this team could do some serious damage. I think it's fair that we all kind of wonder, can it get done in the playoffs? And that's fair.
Well,
but
yeah, a lot of it.
If this is the version you get, then yes, I'm all in on this team being able to make that run. I just don't believe it until I see it.
Yeah, a lot of it is predicated on the guys around him, like them basically keeping their end of the bargain, right?
Yeah.
I mean, that's what it is. But that's who Ben Simmons is. He's not a scorer. That's not who he is. Like, it's time to realize that. But for Simmons to be the optimum level of Ben Simmons, it is predicated on the guys around him keeping up their end of the bargain. In other words, you have to have guys that are good enough to be able to hit open shots. He's going to get you. They threw up the stat during the game. Think about this. He leads the league in assists to three-pointers, and he has been the top of that category for years. Think about the three-point shooters he's had on this team. You're thinking to yourself, how the hell did he lead that category with Josh Richardson and Al Horford clanking threes up there for him? So that kind of shows you in years past that he was getting those guys open looks because no one was worried about defending them. But again, I go back to, this is where these teams are having some problems, is now they have guys that can knock those shots down. I mean, last night Curry hit 4 3-pointers. So it's like, I can't sag off of Curry, because if he catches one, he's going to hit one on me. So I got to make the decision. And Simmons, I think as he's getting into this offense more, he knows that. Like, he's smart enough to realize you can't sag off of him. I'm going to go. And the second you do, I will hold that ball a split second longer, and that's when Curry will get you. And, Green did not have a good night last night shooting the ball, but he had a couple of open looks that you would hope that other nights he gets them. Harris had a couple of open looks and banged down 2 threes last night. So it's just, it's one of those things. I thought in the second half, the offense really changed when Simmons kind of oddly got less aggressive, because he was playing at the Kings' pace. And they changed the pace of the game. He kind of changed the pace of the offense, and that was predicated a lot off their defense too.
That's exactly what I was going to say. I think that all just generated based off of them slowing down the defensive side, which then allowed them to counter when they got to stop with a nice offensive possession. Yeah, the first quarter, they scored 42 points.
Because you get 3 guys that went over 20 last night.
Yeah, yes, you did. And Tobias, he struggled throughout the majority of the game, but the fourth quarter came in. It was like there was a stretch where there was the Kings got 8,000 offensive rebounds on one possession. It was pretty damn annoying, which they got a kick out to Buddy Hield for 3, who missed it. And after that possession, Tobias hit a 3 in the corner. Matisse Thybulle got a big-time block, and then Shake Milton in the corner knocked down a three, and from there, the Sixers pretty much rolled with it. So that was that turning point in the fourth quarter, and it started with Tobias Harris knocking down that three, and I thought he showed some big-time leadership, and he's done that a few times this year. I'm at the point where I am starting to get convinced that this is who Tobias Harris is going to be this season.
Are you convinced about Furk? We got to put a message up on the board here. Nadir says, Brodes said Furk wouldn't get any playing time after acquiring Curry and Green, but Furk seems to have a bigger role this year than last year.
No, he doesn't. He was the sixth man off the bench last year, so he doesn't have a bigger role.
Although he
based off of personnel reasons,
he had some nice shots. He was 2 for 2 at a time last night. He had a couple of threes.
Did you see the defense early on? You won't see anything like that in the playoffs. If he does that against teams in the playoffs in half-court sets, then I will come up here and say
their defense.
Yeah.
Their defense is hard.
Come on. I mean, that is brutal. The fact that you even put that out there on the court in the NBA, it looked like I was watching. I hate when that happens, but I know it's how the NBA regular season works. It felt like when they dribble the ball up nonchalantly, pop a three, the other team comes down, pop a three, the other team comes down, spinorama, pops a three. It feels like I'm watching an LA Fitness game.
Broad says Cork is unplayable in the playoffs. My question is, why does Doc play him so much? What is it that Broad sees that Doc doesn't? Can't the coaching staff see that Furk is unplayable?
Well, the ironic thing is Brett Brown played him, and everyone ripped Brett Brown for playing Furk on Korkmaz. Now Doc does it, and now Doc is a genius coach for realizing
he
Furk
played
on
17 minutes last night, by the way, to the message.
I know, but I just...
So he's not playing major minutes. He comes in, he has his role. He comes in, stretches the defense with the second unit, and if he knocks down a couple threes in that particular night, then he's useful. If he's not, then he's not useful.
Right. I just don't think he's going to get that time and space in the postseason to be able to do it. Look, there's plenty of guys that have NBA regular season roles. I think we talked about this, right?
Look, Joe Harris is the best three-point shooter in the league. When he got to the playoffs, though, teams take you out.
And that's my biggest concern with Furkan every year. It's like, here's this guy who plays such a big role for not big role, but he plays a role in your regular season. And then you got to pretty much take away that role that you used all 82 games long. You can't even utilize that method anymore because he can't play in the postseason. It's almost as if you wasted that spot if he's not going to be able to play when it matters. Because you play 82 games with him playing 17 minutes. Then you get to the playoffs, you can't use him. Well, what did you learn about that then? What did you learn all regular season long?
Well, every team tightens their rotation.
Yeah, but he's a guy that comes off your bench rather early. He's not one of those back end guys. So if he's a rather early off the bench guy who's not going to be able to play minutes in the postseason,
well, I think he is though. I think he's
got to get a shot at
17 minutes, and if he's hitting his threes, he gets more minutes.
You think
and
he
if
plays
he's not
17 minutes in a playoff game?
No, not necessarily in a regular season game. As I just said, if he's hitting his shots, he gets more minutes. If he's not hitting his shots, he doesn't get the minutes. So he was hitting his shots last night. So they gave him some more minutes. I mean, he's 5 of 7 from the field, 2 of 3 from 3-point range. I mean, a lot
of that happened in the first quarter when they scored 42 points.
Oh, well, but that pace of the game, that pace of the game kept him in it.
Yeah, that
it was up and down, and it allowed him to get some open looks, and he took advantage of the open looks. Now, if it's a night when he gets these open looks and he's ice cold, I would imagine that he's not going to get those extended minutes.
Yes.
But in the playoffs, I agree. Like, I'm not counting on Furkan Korkmaz to play 25 to 35 minutes in a playoff game.
7, if that.
I mean, you're way more down on him than I think you just do it to grind people's gears. But I would never. Yeah, he certainly is a guy. I think he has improved his game offensively, too. He's more than just a three-point shooter. He's not great at putting the ball on the floor, but he can add.
He's trying.
He's added a little bit more to the game than just that. But I'll tell you what, when he catches and shoots, man, he's got the quickest release out there. My God.
He went from, I think that one year that really destroyed him, 32%, which is funny because everyone called him a three-point specialist. I'm like, the guy's shooting 32%. How is that a three-point specialist? He did improve to 40. My problem isn't the offensive side, though. My problem's the other side. I'm not knocking him for his three-point shooting and from that side of the floor. All my concerns really rely on one area of his game, which you see guys lick their chops when they see him out there on the defensive side. It's easy. Get a switch and dominate. You saw it happen last night, too, a couple times. He's a tough watch on that end.
All right, Sports Bash brought to you by Matt Blatt Nissan. The all-new Matt Blatt Nissan is now open on the Black Horse Pike in Egg Harbor Township next to Home Depot. online, mattblattnissan.com. This is the Sports Bash. Watch the show live on our website, 973ESPN.com. Yep, you can watch the show on your Comcast remote. Just hit the little microphone button and say, watch the Sports Bash, and you can stream that to your television. You can listen on the free mobile app powered by First Bank of Seattle. This is the Sports Bash. Coming up, Paul Hudrick inside the Sixers, Geoff Mosher. Philly's made a couple of moves. We'll get into what they're doing. And Joe Girardi said something that we will get into. But when we come back, the latest on Carson Wentz. There's some new news coming out, and we have it next.
It's Sixers basketball tomorrow on 97.3 ESPN with the voice of the 76ers, Tom McGinnis, calling all the exciting play-by-play action.
Simmons on the drive. Simmons into the lane. Simmons to the corner. Danny Green open. 3-ball up. Got it. Triple good.
The Sixers are in Portland to face the Blazers tomorrow. Coverage begins at 10 p.m. Philadelphia 76ers basketball on your radio home of the Sixers in South Jersey. 97.3 ESPN.
It's a new year and an all-new Matt Blatt Nissan. Matt Blatt Nissan on the Black Horse Pike in Egg Harbor Township next to Home Depot. Help us celebrate when you get out of that old car, truck, or SUV and into a brand new Nissan. 2020 Nissan Kicks. $4,000 off MSRP on in-stock units or get 0% APR financing for 60 months on new in-stock Nissan Kicks, Sentra, or Altima models. Plus, Matt Blatt Nissan has fast-track checkout available online at mattblattnissan.com. Our non-touch delivery and electronic paperwork ensures your safety comes first. We want to help with your credit approval today so you can drive a new Nissan with 0% APR financing. Matt Blatt Nissan on the Black Horse Pike in Egg Harbor Township or online at mattblattnissan.com. Unapproved credit. Negative equity will be refinanced into new vehicle. All factory rebates and incentives to dealer. 0% APR financing based on 1516 per 1,000 borrowed. Offers can't be combined. Call 888-731-5030 for all the details. It's on at Matt Blatt Nissan on the Black Horse Pike, Egg Harbor Township.
Oh yeah, it's on at Matt Blatt Nissan.
East Coast Roofing and Siding, protecting what you love and own. East Coast Roofing and Siding, trust us with your family and home.
Hi, I'm Larry Styler.
And I'm Sean Styler.
We'd like to remind you that East Coast Roofing, Siding, and Windows is a professional business open year-round and has been serving South Jersey since 1979. It seems, however, that many of you feel sorry for us in the cold and hold off calling until spring, along with everyone else. The truth is, we and our families eat as much in the winter as we do in the summer. So call us now while prices and wait times are at their lowest and learn how great financing plans can help you. And please don't feel bad. We have Long Johns and we'll wear them. So call 646-1444 or visit us online at eastcoastroofing.com. If you'll call, we'll show up.
East Coast Roofing and Siding, trust us with your family and home.
The COVID-19 vaccine distribution has started, which is why I'm hopeful that a stronger, healthier future is in sight. But we're not there yet. We have to stop the virus from spreading. Take it from me, Dr. Kemi Ali from Henry J. Austin Health Center. Even though it's 2021, my fellow doctors, nurses, EMTs, and all healthcare workers around New Jersey are
Yeah, it's as simple as that. Go to our website, 973ESPN.com, and you can watch the show live. Very easy to do. What's going on, everybody? I'm Mike Gill. I'm the one dressed in blue. Brodes is over there. He's got the hat on. A little ski hat today. The ski hat's for when the snow comes.
Correct. I'm mentally preparing.
I'm mentally preparing. Well, you know what's going to happen. We won't get any snow.
That's what I said last time, and we got bombarded. So I feel at this rate we're going to get
bombarded for like 2 hours.
You did. Up by me, I was swarmed.
Did you need a snowblower?
I did. I should have called Mosher.
That's amazing. Oh, man. Latest on the Eagles. Some news today. If you haven't been paying attention, here we go. Latest on the Carson Wentz trade. Potential trade partners have been unwilling to meet the Eagles' demands for Carson Wentz. Are we getting to the point where we're like, hey, we were told this was imminent. This was going to happen in the coming days. And now teams seem to be unwilling to meet the Eagles' trade demands. From what I'm understanding here, Brodes, is they want the almighty Matthew Stafford deal.
I know that Howie Roseman is clearly playing this to try and get as much as he possibly can, but I just don't know, because we understand that Howie Roseman leaks stories. They leak information. They want certain things out there. Well, guess what? The Bears are doing the same thing. The Colts are doing the same thing. All these organizations do this. So when we hear that this is the case, what's real and what's not? I just don't know what to believe anymore when they say Howie's asking for this and this guy doesn't want to do that. And it's all smoke and mirrors. This is what they do. This is how they operate. So I truly don't know what to believe. And I'm not saying this is how the Eagles operate. I'm saying this is how the league works when you pull off a trade at this level. There's a lot of cat and mouse stuff happening.
The cat and mouse game is, hey, the Eagles are asking for too much and we don't want to get involved. Or is it, hey, we're just going back and forth?
It's probably they're just going back and forth. That's how I see it.
So you're not buying like the whole, this is falling apart, I guess.
No.
I got an email this morning from a pretty plugged in person that says the Eagles are dreaming they will never get a first round pick for Wentz. He's a headache. He's expensive, and locker rooms don't want him.
Well, I don't know who that person obviously is, but I will say, I think that's a little extreme. Look, and obviously this person's respected, as you're saying, but
I responded, by the way. I agree. If you had a first-round pick on the table, you would have taken it by now. Response, exactly.
I'm not disagreeing with the first-round thing. I'm saying the fact that, like, no teams want him, and he's a huge pain,
well, I think his point was they don't have teams lining up. So if you have one or two, don't piss them off.
Okay, that's fair. I can get behind that for sure. If that's the message, I can support that message. But I do think that...
don't insult their intelligence because you don't have other ones to go turn to.
Right, that's fair. I can absolutely 100% support that logic. I don't know if it's as... I think, Frank Reich would want his hands on him again, or else they wouldn't have even been in the conversation. And their GM made it clear that they were in talks with the Eagles, so there clearly is some sort of conversations happening about it.
Yeah, Mike K from the Star Ledger, that's n8j.com, reports that teams have been unwilling to meet the demands. And he adds in the story that the Eagles don't want to give Wentz up for much less than what the Lions got for Matthew Stafford. The Colts have asked for a player along with Wentz to help close the gap, while Chicago is, quote, growing impatient with the Eagles. So this is interesting. The Colts have asked for a player. How many people have messaged us on our stream board that why not include Zach Ertz? So would the Colts say, is Frank Reich saying, I'll take Wentz, but I want Ertz with him?
It's possible.
I don't know why the Eagles would say no to that.
Right, because you want to get rid of Zach Ertz anyway.
If you're saying, if I want to add, are they saying, hey, if I add Ertz, I want another draft pick? Or I want another, you know what I mean?
Well, what's Ertz's value without Wentz? If you said, I'm trading Zach Ertz today, what do you think Zach Ertz's value is?
I don't know. I mean, there's people out there, a buddy of mine, he's broken down, he's damaged goods. I don't think I agree with that. I think Ertz just got hurt this year, and it's not like he stunk the year before. He's still been a pretty productive guy. I mean, he's only 31 years old. I don't think he's going to be the guy that he was, a record setter, but I still think, look, my big problem with Ertz over the years has been, no yak Zach, where we live. You get hit and he goes down immediately. Like, the next tackle he breaks will be the first tackle ever, but he's still highly productive at catching the ball. But at an older age, is he going to be able to get open as well? Is he going to be able to get that? What made him a tough matchup is he was very athletic. at the tight end position, and he found little spots he was able to get open because of his speed and athleticism at that position. Is that going to diminish now that he's beat up a little bit?
I don't think it's going to that degree. I still think he has the capability of doing it. And I'm not saying that it's right, but I truly feel that the relationship between the organization and he can kind of feel the room and understand that his time here in Philadelphia was coming to an end. I think that played a role in the way that he played out there. And once again, I don't think that that's right. You should, and I'm not saying he's clearly a professional. He probably could have handled this year better emotionally. But I do feel that played a role in his body language, in his mentality, and maybe his preparation. And if he goes to another organization and has a fresh start, I think he can still come back and be a productive guy.
Stan Jones is watching on YouTube. He says, is Wentz more like Stafford or Goff? Rams had to give a first to dump Goff's contract. It's an interesting question. Who is he more comparable to? Wentz to Goff or Wentz to Stafford?
I don't think Wentz's contract is a dump contract where it's like, hey, we got to get rid of this. Let's dump this on you kind of thing. I think there's still more of the intrigue, more of the upside with Wentz. It's somewhere in between, I would say, I guess, because I don't look at Wentz's contract as a dump contract. We got to get rid of this
the
thing.
team that gets Wentz is getting a good deal.
Exactly.
The Eagles are the ones that have the crappy end of the deal because of all the language built into it about the dead money. If you get out of the contract early, that was built in to protect Wentz from getting traded, essentially. Wentz he wanted to make, look, Rob Motti has been on the show a lot from the Associated Press, and he talked about it. Wentz doesn't want to have to leave. He's got the foundation here, that AO1. He's got the food truck. His family's here. He doesn't want to have to move his wife and kid all over. He wants to be a guy that establishes a residency in that community. So he doesn't want this. It's got to be really bad for Wentz to say, I'm willing to try to – now, his kid's very young. I don't even know that the kid's 1 year old yet. So it's like you better make that decision now before your kid turns 2, 3, and you're like, you know what, I don't want to be here anymore. If he really doesn't want to uproot his family and move them. But keep in mind, the next place he goes, he has to start the foundation over, the food truck, and all the things that he has built in this community. He's got to start from scratch. I mean, not that that's all that hard, but he's established that here.
That is very true. And I kind of want to bring something up that Josh and I were talking to PT about yesterday. And it was, do you think that when Carson Wentz comes back here, he gets booed? Is he a guy that you just destroy here if you're a fan base? Because there's supporters. There's also guys that hate him and always thought he stunk for the last 4 years and wanted him gone back then. So his presence, how do we feel about him if he comes back against the Eagles? Is it a boo? Is it an appreciation? Or is it a mix of both? You can hear the boos on the left side of the link, and on the right side of the link, there's some cheers. How do you think the reaction would be to Wentz coming back to Philly?
Probably in the early portions, I would imagine it's mixed.
Yeah.
It's typically later on down the road is when the Philly fans re-embrace you.
I don't think he deserves the boo, but because everyone's going to look at this and say, oh, he's a horrible person, horrible teammate, he's uncoachable, this and that, so hard-headed, and because that's the storylines that pop up with these headlines so much over the last year and a half or so, 2 years, I think that will draw everybody into the harsh boo. I think it would turn into a really disgusting boo if I had to guess.
Really?
I really do believe so.
I don't know. I feel that the Wentz supporter and Wentz fan is the non-vocal Yahoo.
The supporter.
Right. Like if you're a Wentz fan, you're not a Yahoo. You're not like.
But that defends my point of these guys are going to be so outrageously mad at Wentz that they would probably overpower the supporters. Because the supporters aren't, what are they going to do? Like, yeah, of course they'll cheer, but the like drunk boo is a powerful message.
Yeah, I don't know. I don't know. I feel like they are the vocal majority that listen to our shows. They're the people that are passionate and they're somewhat irrational day to day. I think the person who likes Wentz and supports Wentz probably doesn't consume the product all the time, and it doesn't control their lives that Carson Wentz is not the MVP candidate that he was in 2017. That's not a bad thing or a good thing. Each person is their own level of fan, but I think that some fans are, I want to say, take it a little bit more seriously than others.
When you watch him
play,
not a knock. No,
I
understand. I understand completely what you're saying. When you watch him in another uniform, when Do you think deep down you'd be rooting for him to succeed? Do you not care because he's not here anymore? Like, how do you think you would feel about Wentz in another uniform watching him? Would you want him to stick it to the ownership and flip him the double bird like Josh did to us the other week? Or how do you think you'd feel?
Well, like Andy Reid, I root for Reid because I thought the people out here who thought Reid was a bad coach were just absolutely morons. And look, I thought Reid, by the way, did not have a good Super Bowl. And I don't know how much of the whole thing with his son kind of played a factor with this, but look, the guy can coach. He's been to the Super Bowl back-to-back seasons. He was there with the Eagles. He won a Super Bowl. The guy, all he does is win. Is he a flawless head coach? No, but these people out there that think that Andy Reid did not do a good job, I don't know who you want. Like, you want Vince Lombardi mixed with Bill Belichick, mixed with, Joe Gibbs in his heyday. Like, there is no perfect head coach. So you have to take that into consideration. Yeah, Reid has flaws. They all have flaws, but take the flaws out of it, Reid's one of the best. So I kind of always been pulling for Reid to say, look at these idiots who thought that Reid couldn't coach. And look what he's like he's one of the probably going to go down as one of the top 10 head coaches of all time. And yet these Eagle morons didn't think that he could coach. So I don't know that I feel the same way about Wentz, that I just want him to go out there and be like the greatest quarterback of all time. But I'm not going to sit there and say, man, I hope this guy sucks.
Yeah. Well, there are people who do feel that way. By the way, when you're talking about the perfect coach, don't forget a sprinkle of Nick Sirianni on top.
Come on.
What? I don't know. He could be the greatest coach ever. Who knows? Could you imagine that? If Howie Roseman, after all this, ends up pulling out the next Bill Belichick or Andy Reid.
Hey, he's done it before. He found Andy Reid.
That's true. They did hire Andy Reid.
He hired
No one
Andy
knew who
Reid,
he was.
and nobody knew who he was. Look, they hired Doug Peterson, and nobody was going to hire Doug Peterson. And like him or not, Doug Peterson did something that no other coach in this town has done. He won the Super Bowl. I feel like we've kind of forgotten that. He won the Super Bowl. And 3 years later, this is like the whole thing. Like, I just can't be like, you went from winning the Super Bowl to idiot.
No, I agree with you.
Those things
I agree with you.
I'm not saying because you won a Super Bowl or because Howie Roseman built a roster that won him the Super Bowl, that automatically means he's going to do it again. But I can't fault Jeffrey Lurie for saying, hey, I'm going to give you another chance to try to do it again.
I would love to know, though. See, I agree. If Howie Roseman, and it was clear, this is his last chance, I wonder if the fan base would feel different about it. If you knew this is the last chance, but it feels like he has this leash that's so long that if he screws up here, he'll still be safe. And I think that's where the stress and the frustration really comes in for the fans, because they feel that this is always going to last no matter what. If he does a bad job, it doesn't matter. If we knew that this was his final go at it, I think there would be more of a calmer situation. Unless
I don't agree.
You don't think so?
No.
But it seems like his job is never, ever, ever, ever on the table.
I mean, I agree with what you're saying, but your job gets questioned when the team loses. They've lost once. They had a losing year this year, which was clouded by a lot of injuries. The last time they had a losing season was what? 2016.
7-9.
So it's hard to say, like, hey, the team doesn't win. They win. They win. It's what they do. They've constantly won. And I know they didn't win to the level that people want. I get that. But they don't have losing seasons. You make changes like that when your team is 4-12 and 4-12 and 6-10 and 5-11, and you can't get out of that rut. They had a bad season in 2012. They won 10 games the next year. They didn't lose again. They had another 10-win season. They won 9-7, like they haven't had these 4-win seasons, and they haven't had back-to-back losing seasons all that much either, where you're like, oh, we're trending downward.
What if they have a 4-win season this year?
Then I think you're in trouble.
Okay.
Yeah.
I think so too.
Yeah. Sports Bash is brought to you by, because then the fan would just be overwhelming. I know they're bad now. It would just be insufferable.
3-win team.
Brought to you by East Coast Roofing Siding, serving all of South Jersey. If you call, they'll show up. Find out at eastcoastroofing.com. I'm Mike Gill. This is the Sports Bash on 97.3 ESPN. You can watch the show live. Go to our website, 97.3ESPN.com. Each and every day, you can watch the show live on our website, 97.3ESPN.com. And, of course, you can download the free mobile app and watch the show on your phone. When we come back, we got plenty more Carson Wentz. They're saying Could be traded. But our team's not happy with what the Eagles are asking for. We got that and more. We'll put your comments on the screen, so get them in. This is the Sports Bash. Watch the show live on our website, 973ESPN.com. Mike Gill, Hunter Brody. What's going on, everybody? At Brodes81 on Twitter. I'm at Mike Gill Show. And, of course, we are live on Facebook, YouTube, and Twitter. You can watch the show right there. You can also watch the show through your free mobile app. If you download the app to your phone, you can watch the show on your phone. That's a lot easy to do. Very easy to do, too. Or you can put it up on your television screen. A lot of people have been doing that. If you're watching the show on your TV in your house, take a picture, and send it in to us on the text board, 609-403-0973. 609-403-0973. If you're having lunch at your favorite establishment, tell them, hey, can you put the Sports Bash on TV? That would be cool. That'd be very nice of you. All right, so the latest is up on the screen on Carson Wentz. The potential trade partners have been unwilling to meet the Eagles' demands. Is this a game of cat and mouse? I know this text message is kind of interesting here that we just got in from somebody who says, Howie is trying to be the smartest guy in the room with the Wentz deal, and he's run into someone smarter in Chris Ballard.
No, I think all these GMs try and get the most bang for their buck. I don't think what Howie Roseman, unless he's so out of touch, which I find it's hard to believe he's that out of touch. But I think he's just doing what most GMs would do, try and get the most for a quarterback like Carson Wentz.
Yeah. So Roseman has done a really good job in the trade game. I know people don't want to admit that, but he has made some good trades in the past, and he's been in the situation kind of like he traded Kevin Cobb. Remember that to Arizona. He ended up getting a 2nd-round pick and players. I mean, he got Kevin Cobb. He got, I think Dominic Rodgers-Cromartie was in that deal. I can't remember who else was in that deal, but he ended up getting a 2nd-round pick for Kevin Cobb, who couldn't play a lick. He was horrible. He traded Donovan McNabb. They got 3 draft picks back in that deal. They got a 2nd-rounder, and I can't remember what else they got. I mean, the problem is people will say, well, then they messed up the draft. It's like, geez, okay. I get it. Like, they don't hit on every draft pick. I think in that they got Nate Allen, Trevor Laws, and Quentin Demps were the 3 guys they got back in the trade for Donovan McNabb. Allen was okay. Trevor Laws was like a rotational defensive tackle. Demps was just an average. He was like a kick returner. They traded for Darren Sproles for a 5th-rounder. Darren Sproles was a pretty nice player for this team.
Definitely. And he did. We mentioned the J.J. one. We mentioned the Sam Bradford one. The problem is there's some moves that don't relate to this. Like, for example, I don't think Ajayi or Sproles really relates to a Carson Wentz type of deal, but the Sam Bradford one would.
They traded Sam Bradford away. Very tough to do here. They were able to get back a 1st-round pick and a 4th-rounder.
Yeah, I remember the day that happened. I was like, whoa, what just happened?
Yeah.
Because we didn't think Carson Wentz was going to even play that beginning of the year. And then all of a sudden, the guy you drafted is now ready to rock and roll for his first season. The anticipation for the season really sparked for me the moment that happened.
And they also traded, if you remember, Byron Maxwell and Kiko Alonso. They unloaded those players off, and that allowed them to go up in the draft and draft Carson Wentz.
Yeah, I mean, it's so hard. Like I said, I think each trade has its own personality. Each trade has its own kind of uniqueness to it. And when you're talking about this type of deal, I don't know if anything else really relates just based off of Carson Wentz's play last year, the dead cat money hit, teams knowing that you want to get rid of him so badly. I think that's also something big here to factor in. With these other trades, did teams know how bad you really needed to move on from Sam Bradford? No. I mean, it's not even close to the same situation. So you lose that power as a franchise when teams know there's a lot of turmoil involved. So how much does that play a role in how you can play your cards out on the table,
Yeah, I absolutely, another thing is here too, and a couple of messages coming in on, our video stream. Stan Jones says, the best thing the Patriots have done over the years is admit their mistakes and move on. Roseman needs to do that. Maybe he is. Maybe he is admitting a mistake. I made a mistake. We gave Wentz money, and he's not the guy that we thought when we gave him that money. So we're going to move on from him, and we're going to swallow the cap hit. Is that them admitting the mistake?
That's very fair. If you ask me what the right thing to do here would be, it would be to keep Carson Wentz and try to fix him. But who's to say that if they went down that road, it wouldn't have failed? And then you're now looking at a quarterback 2 years down the road with this big contract who can't play, and he's been what he was last year. Do I think that's the case? No. But if that was happening, well, then you'd look at Howie Roseman and criticize him and say that he was a bum that kept on Carson Wentz when he should have traded him the year after the downfall. That's what would have happened, right? People would have said, how dare Howie Roseman keep Carson Wentz?
It's an interesting take from Sean Pould watching on Facebook. He says, I think a lot of people will cheer for Wentz when he comes back because they feel like the organization failed him. The cheering is like a big FU to the organization.
See, I feel the majority of people would feel that way. I just think the irrational, drunk Lincoln Financial Field people that hate him, sort of like the Folesian Society people, they're louder because they're
Folesian society.
Yeah, they have that I don't know, their little clique. They're just loud. So I think that you'd hear a lot of those loud boos.
Are a lot of your friends in the Foles clique?
I have some friends in the Foles clique. Yes.
Are they irrational friends or like just with that?
I think they do it to push my buttons.
Yeah?
Yeah.
Okay.
Do you?
I mean, I know people who are Folesy guys. Yeah, definitely. But
are they still?
Oh, yeah. I don't know if they want him to come back.
That tells you everything you need to know then.
But I think that they were like, they should have kept him. They should have got rid of Wentz back then and kept Foles. I can't believe that's still a thing. Derek is watching on YouTube. He says, I wouldn't give up anything either for a quarterback that can't stay healthy, had a QBR of 49.6, threw 15 interceptions, and I can't remember the fumbles he had last year because he holds onto the ball too long.
Is health still an issue with him?
I think it's something to think about, no question. Hey, coming back, Jason Fitz. We'll get his opinion on what will happen with Wentz. All right, hour 2 of the Sports Bash is here. It is 97.3 ESPN. Don't forget, watch the show live on our website, 97.3ESPN.com. I see somebody who posted on the Facebook stream said, I didn't know this was a thing. Well, it is a thing. You can watch the show live. Just go to our website, 97.3ESPN.com. There's other ways you can consume it. You can go to Facebook, Twitter, YouTube, but the easiest thing to do is just go to the website, and right on the front page of the website, you'll see Watch the Sports Bash. Click on that, and then that'll have the video player in it, and you can watch us right there. And then you can be a big part of the show each and every day, and you can watch us. And, yeah, you can watch us. That's what I got.
It's good analysis.
Yeah. What do you mean you can watch us? That's what my friend said. What do you mean you can watch the show? What are you on TV? Kinda. I mean, who has TV anymore? My girlfriend's sons. They don't watch any TV. It's all just YouTube.
That's crazy.
All they watch. Like, we have one of those smart TVs, and it has all the apps at the bottom, and they go right to YouTube. They scroll right to YouTube.
Now, I still have cable.
I have cable in my bedroom. I don't have cable in my living room.
Well, what I do is I use something where I have the Xfinity app on my So I have cable, but I don't pay for all the boxes. I just use the Xfinity
I don't
app.
think I could do that.
No, it's still the same. You have the guide. You have everything. So it looks exactly the same. I'm with you, though. But
it's tougher. Yeah, I have cable in my bedroom. I don't have cable in the living room. We have YouTube TV, but they just watch YouTube. They don't watch, like, the ratings for the Super Bowl were down, and said, yeah, because no one has cable. Everyone's watching. I watch the game, but I don't have cable.
Yeah, I know. I hate seeing the ratings numbers.
Who? The streaming numbers are up. Yeah. So, all right, let's bring Jason Fitz in. He's the host of Spain and Fitz right here on 97.3 ESPN. And, of course, you can hear him at 7 o'clock right here tonight on 97.3 ESPN. And, of course, he, like all guests, appears via the Boardwalk Honda hotline. Jason Fitz, welcome back, man. How you been?
Man, I'm great. And I heard what you guys were just talking about. Funny thing that a lot of people don't realize. Before I left the music business back in, like, let's say 2016, we did a survey of how kids were consuming music. And the number one way, even back in 2016, that kids were consuming music more than all others combined was YouTube. Like, I grew up in an MTV generation. Well, that's what kids are doing now with YouTube. They just make their playlists. They create their own MTV. So for all of the Spotify's and Apple Music conversations, YouTube has actually been, at the forefront of it. It's part of why I love working in digital for ESPN, is because there's a big part of me that believes that in 5 years, that stuff will be every bit as important as what TV is now.
Yeah, I mean, we're doing the show now. You can watch the show. See, now we have a picture up. It just says on the phone, ESPN radio host. But a lot of people now watch our show live digital because that's, we were just talking about that. You can watch our show on YouTube. I said, all these kids in our house, they don't go to cable, or they don't go to YouTube TV. They go right to YouTube and watch everything. It's just crazy how, and that's where sports are going, is that everything is just digitally now.
Yeah, well, and to that end, I mean, Mike Gill Jr. and I hosted an NFL pregame Super Bowl show, and they cut off the best moments in Super Bowl history, and last time I looked, that had about 3 million views digitally. So you're absolutely right. Like, you can pull these huge numbers with digital content because there's so many people that even if they're watching the game with their friend or they're watching the game at the house, we've reached a world where everybody has multiple devices at once. So even if they're not always paying attention, if they see on the, whether it's on their phone, on Twitter, on YouTube, on their phones or whatever, they click in and they listen. And it's amazing. It makes outreach incredibly possible as opposed to what it was a few years ago. So I love that portion of it.
Well, let's get down and dirty now, because Carson Wentz's name is at the top of all the trade lists, but there are reports here locally that trade partners have been unwilling to meet the Eagles' trade demands for Carson Wentz. How are you reading, Jason Fitz, about how Howie Roseman's playing this? And by the way, he's probably the most hated sports figure in the entire area here. So people want this guy gone. How is he playing this Wentz thing?
Well, the problem is, this is a game of chicken constantly, right? And at some point, if you're the other organization, what I always tell everybody to do is flip your fan hat to the opposite side. So let's say that all of a sudden Carson Wentz was the quarterback of the Washington football team. What do you think then his trade value would be? That gives you a much, because it's so hard when we have our own fan hat. Like, as a Raiders fan, I'd love to sit there and say, Derek Carr's worth 3 first-rounders. He's obviously not, but I've got my fan hat on, right? So, the problem here for the Eagles organization is the more public and loud this gets, the more everybody knows that a deal has to be done. The more everybody knows the deal has to be done, the more people are going to lessen what they're willing to give up in exchange for Carson Wentz, because all that's going to happen over time is this situation is going to get worse for Philly, and it's going to get worse for the team. So you're just going to bank, if you're another GM, that the toxic environment created by a very public trade demand and the quarterback that has a difficult contract situation is going to allow you to pay less. So I think one of the things everybody has to do is just throw away the Jared Goff trade. It included the number ones, and everybody's talking about how impactful that'll be for the Rams and using that as some Matt Stafford to the Rams as some litmus test for everybody. But it's really not. I mean, part of the reason that 2 number ones were given to Detroit was because they were offsetting the fact that Detroit was agreeing to take on Jared Goff's contract. So it wasn't a Goff contract trade, or a Goff trade, I should say. It was a Goff contract trade, and they had to pay up to get that. So, in my mind, as much as I know Philly fans want Carson Wentz to be worth multiple number ones, I don't think he's going to be in this market because nothing favors the Eagles.
How do you compare Wentz's value to Sam Darnold, Deshaun Watson, Jimmy Garoppolo, the others that are available when you weigh the risk-reward situation?
Well, let me say this first and foremost. If I was the GM of the Eagles, I'd run it back for another year with Carson Wentz and see what a change in environment does. Anytime you've seen some level of greatness from a quarterback, I believe that then you have to look at it and say, how do we repeat that? There's got to be a way. There's something magical in the air. How do we repeat it? We've seen Carson Wentz play at a really high level. So that's what I would do. Now, when you talk about his value, I mean, there is not a team in the league not named Kansas City or Tampa Bay that shouldn't be looking at Deshaun Watson. I mean, that's just fair. Deshaun Watson, to me, has already shown he's a top 5 quarterback in the league on a trash organization. So, if you told me that my beloved Raiders were going to give up their first-round picks for the next 4 years to get Deshaun Watson, I wouldn't even blink an eye. I mean, I'm all in for that. That's how good I think Deshaun is. So I put him in a separate tier. When you start talking about the rest of them, I mean, Wentz to me is better than Garoppolo. We haven't even seen sustained greatness from Garoppolo. We've seen sustained from Garoppolo, and that's about it. So, I would put Wentz in a much higher tier than Garoppolo. And Philly fans, change for breaking up with your girlfriend just to try to date somebody else that might be crazy is not always the best thing in the world here. So, Garoppolo he's not a supermodel. He's more like the crazy girl that you think you're going to fix. I'm not into that. So, I think Wentz is a higher tier than Garoppolo by far.
All right, you're a Raiders fan. If Wentz was traded there, let's just say they swapped him for Carr, how would you feel?
I wouldn't be happy. I think Carr's undervalued. I like Wentz, but I think Carr's undervalued. That's change for the sake of change. You're just burying yourself into a new situation. So, I think those are sort of the same head-scratching quarterbacks where you might have your guy, you might not have your guy, and they've got a lot of life left in front of them. I wouldn't love that move, but I'm also, admittedly, I'm a big Derek Carr fan. I think if Carr goes to the Colts, Carr's a Super Bowl contender. If Carr goes to the Patriots, he's a Super Bowl contender. He's just, the franchise of the Raiders and the Raiders fan base has been, let's say, less than enamored with him, but I don't think that's a reflection of Carr. I think that's the reflection of unrealistic standards. Like, Raiders fans have forgotten about Jamarcus Russell, apparently.
Jason Fitz, Spain and Fitz tonight, 7 to 9, 97.3 ESPN. And all right, I want to get your take on the Super Bowl because I think you and Golick Jr. were talking about this the other night about having the officials' grades, almost like PFF has for the players, doing that for the officials because that game was overtaken by the officiating, even though, I mean, it was a lopsided game, but man, it felt like there was yellow flags flying from all angles.
Yeah, and I've been, ever since I was a podcast nobody had ever heard of, I've been championing this idea. So maybe now it's starting to get a little momentum because Junior and Kirk Morrison both really liked it on the after show. Yes, I think that we should have 100% when they tell you at the beginning of a broadcast who the officiating crew is, underneath there should be a score. And, for everybody that doesn't pay attention to this, the league grades officials every week on the job that they've done. And through that process, that's how they select who works the Super Bowl. So that was, in their mind, the absolute all-star crew, the best graded crew of the year. They had some calls that I thought were absolutely questionable, but we've learned to accept that a quarterback completing 70% of his passes is incredible, right? Which means we've learned to accept the fact that a quarterback incomplete 30% of the time is acceptable. I think we would have better understanding to the job of officiating if, in fact, at the beginning of a game, they'd say, here's your crew. And by the way, this crew has scored at a 87 this year. And, so that they've gotten 87% of their calls right. And over time, while that might be jarring in the beginning, over time, I think it would get everybody a much better understanding of what officials are doing that's good and bad. Why not make that public so that we know? And then, obviously, just like, if you're a fan of, let's say, the Jags, you're probably going to get the worst broadcast team. You're also going to get the worst officiating team, and you'll see it at the beginning of the game, and you'll know what to expect. So, absolutely, I think the league should do it. And the Super Bowl certainly was taken over by some calls that were questionable and in some ways bad. And I don't think it necessarily changed the outcome of the game, but it's just another bad look for the league.
Yeah, I agree with you. I don't think that it changed the outcome, but it definitely ruined it. Second quarter, all the flags, it was a mess. But I do want to ask you, was Andy Reid's legacy hurt by this loss at all? Or is there somewhat of a asterisk next to this because of the offensive line play?
I think that there's a big, we have apologized more for this Super Bowl loss than we ever do for somebody that gets blown out in a Super Bowl. And I think that speaks to how much we respect not just Patrick Mahomes, but Andy Reid, and how much a love child Eric Bieniemy has come for everybody. Everybody seems enamored with everything Chiefs, and I understand it. They've looked so good. I picked them to win in a blowout. I was wrong. But absolutely, I don't think that his legacy is hurt by this one. But I will say this. If this turns into a habit, we've seen 7 of the 8 quarters in the Super Bowls that Mahomes has played. He hasn't been spectacular. And I don't think that that's any reflection. There's context around it. He had no offensive line. But if they turn around and they don't get to another Super Bowl in the next year or two, or they suffer another loss like this, there will be a sharp and quick turn, because whatever popularity and respect that Andy Reid has, Patrick Mahomes has more. And Reid will become the coach that's not getting enough out of Patrick Mahomes if he has another game like this in the Super Bowl. Just like we look at Green Bay and say, how have you wasted Aaron Rodgers? There is now that if you win 2 Super Bowls with Mahomes, that's never going to become a conversation around Andy Reid. But now that you're 1-1 with also an AFC Championship game loss in there, man, he is teetering on the edge in a year of having people say, has he done enough with the best quarterback in the game?
All right, last one for Jason Fitz. Tonight it's Trey versus Luka. It's 11-12 versus 11-14. Yet ESPN, you guys have a ticker at the top of the screen counting down when that game is going to air. Is that going over the top?
1,000%. Just a reminder how much money we've. Hopefully my bosses are busy right now, but that's all because we've spent so much money on the NBA. We got to hype something, right? And look, I believe that Luka Doncic is such a special player. It's going to be fun to watch his rise, and it's going to be fun to watch him dominate in the NBA for a really long time. But that doesn't mean that we have to make meaningless games meaningful. I think that actually reduces the impact of truly important games. It's something that, if I were the czar of the sports world, I would do much differently. I would actually stand up and say, hey, guys, this game probably going to stink. These teams stink, but watch these 2 players because they're really good. Like, a little honesty goes a long way.
Yeah, that's tonight on ESPN television at 7:30. And by the way, they didn't make us plug that for Jason Fitz appearing today. He did it because he wanted to, and it was a good take from him. And, of course, you can hear more tonight at 7 o'clock, Spain and Fitz right here on 97.3 ESPN. And that's the Sixers off tonight. They're out west. They'll play back here tomorrow. They got the 9 o'clock game 10 o'clock game against the Blazers. We'll have that for you on 97.3. All right, Jay Fitz, appreciate it, man.
Appreciate you guys. Have a great day.
He, like all guests, appeared via the Boardwalk Honda hotline. And, I saw that today, and I was like, dude, is that really necessary to do a countdown to Trey versus Luka?
That's insane. I'll be honest with you. That's
Are you
wild.
watching that tonight? Are you in?
No. Toronto Maple Leafs versus the Montreal Canadiens tonight. That game is going to be insane. Insane.
Josh says you have 3 TVs.
Sure.
That's not the point.
Yeah.
The point is, which one are you paying most attention?
Oh.
Anytime you ask a question regarding, are you going to watch that game? Yeah, I might check in, but it's not the one that I'm paying the most attention to. That's the difference.
Leafs Canadiens is going to be a phenomenal matchup. I'm all in on that one.
All right. Sports Bash Live. Don't forget, you can watch the show. Go to our website, 973ESPN.com, and watch the show live. It is brought to you by Matt Blatt Kia. At Matt Blatt Kia, they want to get you approved today. That's Matt Blatt Kia on the Black Horse Pike in Egg Harbor Township. It's Mike and Brodes at Brodes81 at Mike Gill Show. Download the free mobile app. Get it on your phone and watch the show on your phone. You ever watch TV while you're driving?
No.
Like,
I thought you were going to say on my phone. I was going to say
no, like
yes.
on your phone while you're driving.
No, I don't watch the phone while I'm driving. Did you want me to say yes?
Well, sometimes like if Like if a West Virginia game's on, I'll put on YouTube TV on my phone and have it on in the car. And I put the sound through my Bluetooth.
Oh, yeah, but I'm not going to put the phone on like my dashboard or anything.
Well, no, like I have one of these things that hold my phone.
Ah, see, I don't have that.
And then
Okay.
I just put the phone
Well,
in
that's different. I can support that for sure. I didn't know if you were like.
So if you're driving around in the car, you can get the app on your phone, bring us up and watch us.
It's a hell of an idea.
I like it. I like Paul Hudrick, and he's going to give his takeaways from last night's Sixers win while you were sleeping. He's got them now at 97.3 ESPN.com. All right, time now for Inside the Sixers with a win last night in Sacramento. That's 4 straight on the road there, Brodes. It is nice to see them winning road games now as well. Remember last year it was just like a rite of passage. They were going to win every home game, but lose every road game.
Yeah, it's absolutely incredible how they keep pulling it out late in the fourth quarters. What else is incredible, though, is UFC 258 that is up and coming, and DraftKings is giving you 100-1 odds that either fighter in the title fight will land a punch. That is outrageous. Download the DraftKings Sportsbook app right now and use promo code 973 when you sign up. Must be 21 or older, New Jersey only, gambling problem. Call 1-800-GAMBLER.
All right, there he is. Paul Hudrick from 97.3 ESPN.com. Inside the Sixers. Big win last night, Paul, and maybe get your opinion on this. I said at the beginning of the show, I thought it was one of their more impressive wins of the season. Brodes was kind of
I thought it was their best win of the season.
Wow.
I really did. Yeah. Well, listen, because I think, and I get it, we all, myself included, complained about the fact that we have to stay up and watch basketball games at 10 o'clock at night.
Didn't we used to like that? How old are you, Hudrick?
I am 36 years old.
Wow, 36. So, like, when you're Brode's age, we used to love the 10 o'clock.
Oh, yeah,
games.
sure.
That was the best. And now it's like,
10 o'clock games are the best when it's baseball. I love it when it's baseball.
That's even worse.
Relax, cup of
At
coffee.
least basketball, you're getting done around 12:30. Baseball, there is no definitive.
Even in
constant action,
innings,
too.
Come on, 3 a.m., extra innings. Go ahead, continue.
No, but yeah, so, we don't always get a chance to see some of these teams like the Kings. Listen, the Kings have been playing outstanding basketball. They had won 7 of 8 coming in. De'Aaron Fox was the Western Conference Player of the Week. You saw why. The kid is great. He can really play. And so I think that's what makes it impressive too, is that the opponent on the road, West Coast, first game of a West Coast swing. Joel Embiid wasn't great for the first 3 quarters. Neither was Tobias Harris. And so all of that factored in to stay to when you didn't have your best that night for 3 quarters, to then stay in the game and then be in a position to have that dominant fourth quarter. To me, all those factors, that makes it the most impressive win they've had this season. I thought the fourth quarter, and listen, they've been great in the fourth quarter all season long, but just the way that they put the clamps down. That's the other thing. De'Aaron Fox has been, I just had Marshall Harris on the Coming In for Landing podcast, and he talked about how great De'Aaron Fox and Tyrese Halliburton have been in the fourth quarter for the Kings. The Sixers shut them both down in the fourth quarter. So when you factor in all of that, to me, I think it was their best win of the season.
Interesting. Yesterday, Yaron Weitzman was on for Inside the Sixers and said the Sixers have been the best fourth quarter team in basketball. Statistically, they have been the best. You saw that last night. You saw them be the best team in the NBA because they took over that game in the fourth quarter. But what is it about what they did in the fourth quarter that led them to that win?
Well, just defense to me. I mean, they were just so much better on the defensive end. And obviously, Thibault comes in. And I don't think we've talked enough about how great he has been defensively. I mean, I get it on the offensive end, he's giving you nothing, but defensively, he has been unreal. You saw what he did to Fox. I mean, he shut Fox down. And he, there was no help. There was just him, man to man, just his ability to stay in front of Fox and not let him get to the spots on the floor he wanted to get to. That was huge. And then just their team defense, I thought, was exponentially better. When you saw, the way they were helping their rotations, the way Joel Embiid anchored things. I thought Shake Milton defensively on Buddy Hield, I thought he was great. That was one of his better defensive performances I've seen him as an NBA player have. So I think it was just collectively the defensive effort. Plus, I mean, the reality is shot luck is a thing in the NBA. The Kings shot the lights out in the first half, so it evened itself out a little bit in the second. But the Sixers, you have to give them credit for really ramping it up on the defensive end. When you talk about them, I mean, number 1 in the NBA defensive rating in the fourth quarter at like 98. Typically, for those who don't understand defensive rating, if you're below 100 in defensive rating, that is elite. They're at 98. No other team is below 100 in the NBA right now. So they are just clamping down in the fourth quarter, and that's a big reason for their success.
When Matisse has nights like that, people scream that he might deserve more minutes. And I just wonder, would the impact be as strong if he logged more minutes? Is it the fact that he gives you those 20 minutes in that spurt is kind of what changes? Because, okay, you have one defender on you, and then you throw Matisse Thybulle for a little bit. It throws you out of funk, and then you throw someone else back on when Matisse goes to the bench or so. And you also got to remember that you're taking somebody else off the floor that might be able to help you offensively. So how do you answer that question then when people say, does he deserve more minutes?
I think he's in a good place with his minutes right now. And I think what I like that Doc Rivers does that maybe Brett Brown didn't do is if a lineup is looking good, he runs with it. It doesn't matter who's on the floor. If the lineup is doing well, he'll run with it. Shake Milton was going to close that game out last night if he didn't get hurt. Seth Curry had a great first half. Credit to Seth Curry because he kept him in the game in the first half because he was great. And that was great to see. But in the second half, that lineup with Embiid, Simmons, Harris, and then Shake Milton and Matisse Thybulle, that was the lineup that really did the job. That was the lineup that took the game over and led them to the win. And I think with Matisse, I do think there's a point you make, Brodes, in the fact that showing teams different looks. I do think there is something there. I think you see Ben Simmons, you see Ben Simmons, you see Danny Green, you see Matisse Thybulle. It's three different guys. They're all, very good defenders in their own way, but it's a different look. And I think, and Doc Rivers even alluded to it after the game, he said that Matisse Thybulle was the better guy to handle Fox because Fox is so unique with his how quick he is. It is so hard to stay with him one-on-one. I'm not sure, coming into the game, I'm not sure anyone could have done it, but Matisse Thybulle did it. And to your point, Bros, maybe the fact that he was fresh and he didn't get overextended and Fox had played so many minutes, maybe that allowed Matisse Thybulle to have a little bit more energy at the end of the game that allowed him to bottle Fox up. So I think right now, to answer your question, I think Matisse Thybulle is in a very good spot minutes-wise. And, offensively, if he could ever just become a league average three-point shooter, he could be a really dangerous player. As it is right now, though, I think he is in a sweet spot in Doc Rivers' rotation.
Paul Hudrick, 97.3 ESPN.com. Check out the podcast, Coming In for a Landing, wherever you listen to podcasts. And his takeaways are up right now at 97.3 ESPN.com. And you wrote, Paul, this feels different. What feels different about this team in particular? I feel like, we talk a lot about, it's the regular season. I'll only believe it when I see the playoffs. But are you starting to believe more?
Well, for me, Mike, when I saw, and I tweeted this out, going into the fourth quarter, they were down 4, and I had tweeted, you know what? They're only down 4. They haven't played great. If they can just dig deep and play well in the fourth quarter, they can steal this game. And that's exactly what they did. And you just felt like they could do it. Whereas in the past, all those factors on the road, a team that's red hot, a player that's killing you, Embiid's not carrying you, Tobias Harris off night, all of those things, and they overcame it all. And that's not something we saw this team do in recent years. And there's been, I would say, at least a handful of games where you're watching them and you're thinking to yourself, there is no way last year's version of this team wins this game. And I think that's what's different, Mike, is it's just a feeling. And look, they're 7-5 on the road. That's actually the best road record in the Eastern Conference right now. They didn't win their 7th road game, I think, until like 32 games into last season. So those little things are just different, and it's a different feeling. There is a vibe that you feel like they are going to win, whereas last year you were just kind of wondering, okay, well, how are they going to blow this? Whereas now it's like, okay, how are they going to win this?
They scored 42 points, the Sixers did, in the first quarter. What did you see happen for them to lose that lead in the second? The dribble penetration was definitely killer. But do you chalk this up to you're just playing the pace of the Kings' play, and then once you dial into your own game in the second half, you close the door?
Yeah, I mean, it was clear the Kings' pace in the first half killed them. De'Aaron Fox was pushing the ball up the floors, and they run, man. That's what they do. And Tobias Harris told us after the game, they kept hearing the Kings bench yelling, run, 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 run. The coaching staff say that. And they almost took that personally in the second half. We're like, okay, well, no, you're not going to run it anymore. And, they really stepped up the defense on that end, really got back better. And I think it's one of those deals where you can prepare for a transition team. You can prepare for the speed of guys like that, but you can only do so much because then once you get in a game, no one's going to mimic what De'Aaron Fox does because only De'Aaron Fox can do it. So they had to see it in a game up close and get a feel for it and get in the game. Plus, they're on the West Coast. They're adjusting to that time. It's the start of a long road trip. So I think that was all a factor in the first half. And that led to them kind of, I don't want to say a total sleepy start because, they were clearly in the game. They were scoring a lot of points. They just weren't defending. So I think the second half it was, and Doc Rivers said this too, it wasn't necessarily an adjustment. It was just they started playing defense. And one of the key factors was, getting back and really mitigating that fast break and really kind of slowing the Kings down. And you saw it. They scored 40 points in the second half. That's an unbelievable way. That's an unbelievable thing to do against a team, especially one that had been playing so well.
Yeah, there's another thing that stood out to me last night. And, I don't know if this is something that Embiid was conscious of or he's just trying to do more of, but he had 6 assists, and a lot of them are cross-court 3 passes. I mean, he had one big late in the game. And, I talked at the beginning of the show about there's things that Simmons do out there that I don't know that people are really even noticing. He just kind of standing, directing traffic, and people are like, oh, they're playing 4-on-5. And really, Ben is just kind of like, hey, you go there, I'll do this. Like, he's almost, the point person. But one of the things Ben does so well is he has this patience deep in the paint to just, I'll wait and wait until you just have to come at me, and then I find you. I felt like Embiid was almost like, hey, I'm watching some Ben Simmons tape here. I'm going to draw defenders and boom. But I thought he did a really good job of noticing open guys, but waiting a little longer last night.
Yeah, I mean, that's really, Mike, that's been the story of the season to me is how, well, at least a part of it is how well he's handled those double teams all season long, and that he is trusting his instinct and he's trusting his teammates to make those open looks. And I think that's a big part of his success this year. Because it gives teams a little apprehension when they do want to double team him, especially if guys like Seth Curry, Shake Milton, Tobias Harris, if they're all making shots, that makes teams extra hesitant. And I think that's allowed him to get a little bit more space for himself and operate around the basket and score more. So I do think that's been, we talked so much about how great he's been this season, how efficient he's been. And that's, to me, that's as big a part of anything is him trusting his instincts, him almost inviting double teams, and and to your point, being patient and finding his guys, and just the fact that he trusts the guys around him to hit those shots like that. That was Doc Rivers pointed out and said that was his favorite play of the game in the fourth quarter. Embiid gets double teamed. He finds Tobias Harris in the opposite corner wide open, and Tobias Harris bangs home a 3 in a big spot too. I mean, the game was still very much in the balance at that point, and it was such a big spot to do it. So for him to have the wherewithal in that spot to do it just speaks volumes about where he is as a player and how he is seeing the floor.
Yeah, I thought the fourth quarter, there was the stretch where the Kings had like 8,000 offensive rebounds in one possession. They missed a wide open 3, and then it was Tobias with the 3 you talked about, Matisse Thybulle with the block, and then Shake Milton with the 3 as well, and they kind of took it from there. But speaking of Tobias, this isn't the first time he had a strong fourth, and I just wonder, is it time to say this is Tobias? This is the Tobias Harris that we have this season.
By the way, he played 41 minutes last night.
Yeah, he keeps logging 40-plus constantly at this point, it feels.
Yeah, I mean, that's without Mike Scott in the lineup and no true backup 4, that's kind of what he's been doing. But also, Tobias has kind of been flourishing at times with that all-bench lineup because he's the guy. He's the man on that lineup. So you're seeing that. But yeah, I mean, he's just been so far, he's been outstanding. And you have to just give Doc Rivers like all the credit in the world for it. And Tobias, a big thing he talked about last night was getting to his spots. And that's something that he can do really well. Like, he's not the typical shot creator you would look at, fourth quarter, take a guy off the dribble. And like, that's not his game. But because he's so big and strong, and when they put a smaller defender on him, he just kind of gets to where he wants on the floor because of that. And then he just shoots over guys, and he's been almost automatic from the mid range. And that's what you're seeing. If he gets to his left and he's, within 20 feet of the basket and has a smaller defender on him, it's almost automatic he's going to score. And I think the fact that he's driving more, it's opening up that, and it's giving him a little bit more space. And I think the one thing that he talked about last night was just that horn set, which the horn set is basically 2 bigs on each of the elbows and then 2 corners. And when he's in that and he has Embiid to his left and he's setting screens for him and just knocking guys out of the play, it just creates so much more space. And I think Doc Rivers, and again, to point to something that Doc Rivers has done well that Brett Brown hasn't, I don't think Brett Brown did a very good job of utilizing Tobias Harris and putting him in the best spots to succeed. And you are seeing Doc Rivers do that every single night. So is he this guy? so far so good. We'll see. We're like a third into the season, and he has been that guy. But if they want to achieve what they want to achieve, he needs to be this. He needs to be this all-star level, consistent player every single night.
Last one for Paul inside the Sixers, Paul Hudrick at Paul Hudrick. Follow him there. Listen to his podcast, Coming In for Landing, for more good Sixers conversation. What do you make of the rotation? How are you reading what we're seeing from the rotation? And no minutes for Mcshea.
Yeah, it's tough because I'm a big Mcshea guy, and I like him in the lineup, but I get why Doc's doing that. I mean, I guess you could theoretically some lineups maybe go a little bit smaller and use Mcshea and Milton and Korkmaz and Thibault, and Dwight Howard obviously at the 5. But I think that hurts them a little bit because I think their size is part of what makes them so good. As much as they've gotten a little smaller this year compared to last year, I still think their size is one of the big reasons why they're so good defensively, because they're so tough and they rebound the ball so well and all that. But I think what Doc Rivers is doing, I'm okay with it. Korkmaz is a guy, he's so hot and cold. Korkmaz, I mean, you saw like the first half, he couldn't miss. And then the second half, I think he scored 1 point. So, and then defensively, he's definitely a liability on that end. But then again, if you put Mcshea in the game, is he going to give you much more defensively? Maybe against a smaller player, but I don't know. So right now, I'm good with the rotation. I think Doc Rivers is letting it play out. And listen, things are going to happen. Shake Milton, obviously tweaked his ankle a little bit, so maybe that opens up a spot for Mcshea to play next. So it's not like it's the last we've seen of Tyrese Mcshea. He'll get his chances, and I like the fact that it seems like every time he does, he's ready for it. I do, whether it's Mike Scott coming back or whether it's them, finding somebody in the trade market, I would like to see them get a backup 4 of some kind just to kind of help out. But so far, I think Doc Rivers has done a solid job. And listen, when the guys play well, it makes the rotation, it makes you look like a genius for the guys you're playing when they're all playing well. So I think that's a part of it too, is that they're just playing really good basketball.
Well, we're enjoying it. And of course, tonight they have the night off. They're back tomorrow night against the Portland Trailblazers. I predict a lot of points in that one. And then a fun one against the Suns on Saturday afternoon. We'll have all those games for you here on 97.3 ESPN. He's Paul Hudrick. This is Inside the Sixers on the Sports Bash. And he, like August, appeared via the Boardwalk Honda Hotline. All right, Paul, take care, man.
You too, Mike. Thanks, guys.
All right, there he goes. Paul Hudrick, everybody, here on the Sports Bash live on 97.3 ESPN.com. Hey, I want to tell you about my friends over at Bernie Robbins. They're having the Crazy Cupid Valentine's Day sale. I've been telling you about it online at BernieRobbins.com/Cupid, but now it's open in the store. You can go in the store from today until Friday for the first company-wide half-off sale in 15 years. Bernie Robbins Jewelers has a special selection of Valentine's Day gifts on sale at up to 50% off with interest-free financing available. Gifts for your girlfriend or your wife this Valentine's Day. Necklaces, rings, bracelets, earrings, engagement rings, and select watches up to 50% off. Yeah, that's right. Guys, you could go check out a watch for yourself, too, if you're the single guy and say, you know what, I must get myself a Valentine's Day present. Got a little nice watch for 50% off. Men's watches with brand names you'll recognize, dress and sports styles. Perfect time to save on that engagement ring as well. See, Brodes, you didn't wait long enough. You should have waited for the 50% off sale at Bernie Robbins Jewelers. Bernie Robbins offers online chat, virtual appointments, and schedule your in-store appointments to cater to your individual shopping preference and comfort level. Check them out online, BernieRobbins.com/Cupid, or head into the store for 50% off right now. This is the Sports Bash Live on 97.3 ESPN and the free mobile app. Don't forget, you can watch the show live in its entirety, all 4 hours, live video at 97.3 ESPN.com. All right, 3:45 on the Sports Bash, 97.3 ESPN. Watch the show live on our website, 97.3ESPN.com. Mike Gill, Hunter Brody. As we take you till 6 o'clock tonight, don't forget, coming up, football at 4, the latest on where Carson Wentz could go. Are they overplaying their hand here? We'll ask Geoff Mosher coming up in 15 minutes.
Want to dive into some headlines? Got a few pop up here.
There's a very interesting day.
Yeah. Well, I'll start here because the New York Knicks actually just released a statement. So it looks like that they intend to host roughly 2,000 fans at every game beginning February 23rd. The Rangers will start February 26th against the Bruins. Now, I wouldn't care if this was Texas or some of these teams down south, but the fact that it's New York.
Texas opened up to 1,500, Dallas, the Mavericks.
Yeah. So the fact that this is New York, though, I think it holds more value, to me at least.
They're opening it up to 10%.
10%, yeah. Correct. How do you feel about this?
I'm okay with it. I'm getting to the point where I feel like 10% is okay. Like 20% is okay. I would almost say like 50%. They probably could do it where you space people out enough sitting in a section where, I don't know what 50%, whatever the percentage is, where you could sit people like every 3 seats.
Well, anyone who plans to attend must return a negative COVID-19 test within 72 hours of the game. At the games, face coverings will be required, along with temperature checks, and is mandatory social distance throughout, which is obvious. But you do have to have a negative test within 72 hours of going to the game.
So if you want to go to the game, if you know you're going to a game, you have to go get tested and provide that.
It looks to be that way, yeah.
I mean, look, at some point, there's not going to be a day where they just hit a button, flip a switch, and it's just going to be like, all right, everybody's allowed back. Like, I think it's going to be once they get these vaccines to like 70% of people. And at that point, they're just going to be like, all right, 70% of the people are vaccinated. Now it's up to you to make your decisions if you want to go places and do things.
I just find it interesting because the NBA had all these issues, and then they kind of got through it. And now they're opening the door for maybe it possibly to spark something again. Like, they just got through all those issues, and now it's, hey, let's have people all come in. And I understand why. It's a business and all, but it's almost like they're opening the door for maybe that to happen again. While the NHL right now is getting pounded with more and more and more.
Yeah, that's the weird part, is that the NHL has this whole thing going on here in the Northeast, too. That's the thing. It's like you got the Devils, the Flyers. Who else?
You have, off the top of my head,
there's like 3 teams Durso brought up yesterday that are all in this Northeast area that are all having problems with COVID, shutting down the schedule for just about all the teams in this division here. But that being said, look.
Yeah, it was the Capitals, the Flyers, the Devils.
Yeah, that
Sabres.
being said, like, I think we're at the point with a vaccine available. Now, it's not readily available, but where people can make that decision now. Hey, if I want to be one of those 5,000, 10,000, 15,000, I know somebody who went to the Super Bowl. They were one of the 22,000 people there. And they said, look, we were so spread out. I mean, it was outside too, so that's a little different, but from being inside. But I think we're at the point where I think if you're 5,000 to 10,000 people inside the arena, you can make that decision. And I think the people who want to go will make that decision. The problem is people will say, well, yeah, they get sick, then they get me sick. That whole thing is still a big concern for people.
Yeah, I was just thinking, do you think that baseball is going to start the season with fans in the stands right from the jump? Not, obviously not.
I'm pretty sure that Philly spring training, they're letting fans in. I don't think it's going to be a full house, but I think they're letting fans in. And I would imagine by the time April comes around, you might be at the position where if basketball starts doing it, they're outside. You might see baseball teams saying, all right, we're going to do 25%.
That would be unbelievable.
And are you okay with that?
Yeah, for sure. And I'm okay with this, just to be clear. I was just throwing it out there that they just had issues. So is this the best idea? I do think, though, that the NBA All-Star game is a horrendous idea.
Yeah, the players don't want to go. There's no reason to do it.
That is so dumb. That's all about the fan. Like, that weekend is all about everything surrounding it that you can't do right now because of protocol. So I don't see why. We all know why they're doing it, but come on, you got to be smarter than that. This league is the smartest of the 4, and this is what you're going to throw at us? the players aren't going to proceed. Do you think?
There's just no reason to need it. There's not a need for that game.
I agree with you. You got one? You want me?
Yeah, I do. Did you see Todd Mcshea's latest mock draft?
I did.
Thoughts?
I'm okay with Jamar Chase.
No, I had to recheck this because when I saw this, the first time I've seen him as the pick in a mock draft. I've seen Smith, I've seen Weddle, I've seen Parsons, I've seen Surtain. First time I've seen Jamar Chase in that spot. Now, keep in mind, he did not play last year. He opted out of the entire season. You okay with taking, so did Parsons, by the way, but are you okay taking a wide receiver who did not play at all last year?
It would not bother me.
It wouldn't bother you? Okay.
No, it would not. Would it bother you?
I wouldn't say it would bother me, but I am kind of like, the guy didn't play at all.
Well, with
year.
Waddle, you seem to be okay with Waddle before, and he didn't play. He didn't play because of injury.
Hurt.
But would that change if
he
didn't play?
He played some games. He was practicing. He was out there with the team. Where Chase he didn't practice with the team at all. He opted out and just focused on the draft. So he hasn't played a football game or been in a practice since 2019 when they played in the national championship game.
And that was a concern we kind of talked about all throughout the COVID-19 when it first all happened and there were no sports is, what does this mean for the NFL draft? What does this mean for people who are scouting and they have to now look at these players who opt out? This was going to be the issue that we all looked at months and months ago, and now here it is. It's on us. So now these people up top, not just the Eagles, I'm talking about in general in sports, are going to have to make these decisions based off of how they truly feel.
Yeah, so, they take Chase at 6. I didn't really read the whole mock draft. I just happened to see that they took him at number 6. I can pull it up here.
I have no issues with any wide receiver, if they go the outside corner from Alabama, Surtain.
Do you have any of the receivers that you want more than the other?
I think Chase and Devontae Smith are in their own category. So one of those two would make me more satisfied than a Waddle.
He's got Lawrence 1, Zach Wilson 2, going to the Jets. Can you imagine the Jets? You're taking Zach Wilson at 2 with
that
Sam
means
Darnold
he probably thinks Sam Darnold's traded.
Right. He's got Carolina 3 making a trade and taking Trey Lance. Wow. Bridgewater's under contract for 2 more years there. He's got Justin Fields going 4. He's got 4 quarterbacks going in a row. 1, 2, 3, 4. Josh, is that happening? No. All right. Sewell, the offensive tackle, going to the Bengals at 5. So the first receiver on the board would go to the Eagles. They would have the chance to pick any of the 3.
And
he's got him going Chase.
Mel Kiper, he had Lawrence, and then he had both wide receivers going bang, bang pretty early there. So it's funny how one person thinks it's going to be all 4 quarterbacks right from the jump, and then you have Mel Kiper kind of going in another direction where it's more spaced out.
He's got Chase 6, Devonta Smith 7, and Waddle 8. He's got them going boom, boom, boom. So he's got 4 quarterbacks going in a row and 3 wide receivers going in a row, and then Patrick Surtain. If I'm Denver at 9 and I get Patrick Surtain, there I'm doing flips.
Yep, no doubt about it. How about Parsons? Where does he go on that list?
All right, 10, Caleb Farley, who opted out. Kyle Pitts, the tight end, going to the Giants. That would be tough. Giants, that would be a nice landing spot for him, I think. Ingram dropped that pass against the Eagles, or the Eagles would have only won 3 games, and we'd be even higher up the list. They've got Mac Jones going 12 to the Bears.
I'm not big on him.
Rashawn Slater from Northwestern going 13 to the Chargers. Vera Tucker, the offensive tackle, going to the Vikings. Micah Parsons, linebacker, 15 to New England.
Playing under Bill Belichick. Scary sight. Although I don't know what to think of that Patriots team anymore. I'm intrigued, though, to see how this all shapes up this entire draft. Just get someone who's going to impact this team. I don't care what position. You got so many holes. Find a position that you need to fix and go fix it.
You're not in draft mode yet?
Oh, I'm in draft mode, but I'm just saying, yeah, I'm in draft mode. I mean, I'm thinking about it now.
Yeah, I'm all in.
I'm putting quarterback on the list, though.
Well, I said to Josh.
I'm not writing that off, Gil. I'm not.
Because it's the first time I saw Chase. I said, correct me if I'm wrong, because he opted out this year, right? I'm thinking because he was, the year before, he had 20 touchdowns. He had 84 catches, like 1,800 yards and 20 touchdowns.
Yeah, he was a stud.
Right. It was him and Justin Jefferson. They had like 4 guys there, but it was him and Jefferson were the 2 guys there. And people forget about it because he didn't play this year. And I was thinking, wait, I was like, that guy had a monster year, but I don't remember him playing this year. I was like, correct me if I'm wrong. He opted out, right? And yeah, he was a pretty high-profile guy to opt out.
Yeah, he almost made it as if Justin Jefferson was the number 2 receiver.
Well, and they stunk this year.
Yes.
LSU.
Oh, well, Mike, did they ever?
Hey, coming up, football at 4 with Geoff Mosher. So stick around for all the latest on Wentz and the NFL and the Eagles and all that good stuff. It's the Sports Bash Live on 97.3 ESPN, the free mobile app. And don't forget, you can watch the show live on our website, 973ESPN.com. We got a good crowd watching the show today. We appreciate all you guys watching the show. The Sports Bash is brought to you by AmeriSave Mortgage. Lower mortgage rates means more savings. Find out more at amerisave.com. All right, when we come back, right now, this is what we know about Carson Wentz. Potential trade partners have been unwilling to meet the Eagles' demands. What does that even mean? We'll ask Geoff Mosher from the Inside the Birds podcast coming up next. Football at 4, powered by the Inside the Birds podcast and brought to you by Dr. Lyle M. Back. For everything from skincare to cosmetic surgery, go to ilovelylback.com or call 856-MAKEOVER for Dr. Lyle M. Back. Proud sponsor of Football at 4. Geoff Mosher is in the house today from the Inside the Birds podcast. And we've got, I guess, new news to somewhat extent here. The potential trade partners unwilling to meet the demands, Geoff Mosher, of a Carson Wentz trade. Is this surprising to hear? I mean, is this just how this is going to go? What happened on Saturday that it sounded like this was imminent, that it was going to be in the coming days? Wednesday's got to be the coming day, right?
Well, I mean, I guess it depends on the depth of imminent. I feel like for fans, especially, like one day feels like a month, right? So every day that goes by, it's like, oh my God, I can't believe there was no action. And really it's only Wednesday. I mean, we released our podcast on Monday, Inside the Birds, myself and Adam, and said we felt it was imminent and that would happen this week. And we've still got today, tomorrow, and Friday left. But to your point on the gamesmanship of trades, I think that's what you see. I mean, obviously the Eagles want a lot, and obviously the teams involved are looking and saying there's some risk on our end in giving up a lot for a guy who was benched and here that he did, and so this go. This is how negotiations go, and Howie's pretty good at it, so it doesn't surprise me that nothing's been done yet. I just much is going to change between now and when the deal eventually gets done. I don't know who's going to sweeten the pot if they don't feel like there's a great offer out there. And if there were a great 2 first-round pick offer out, I think it's safe to now.
You just said that's something Howie's good at. I thought he was the worst.
Who said that he's the worst? At trades?
People say that. He's the biggest problem. He's got to go. But you just said he's good at something.
Well, listen, Andy Reid is great at winning games. He got fired. Let's not take what people say and hold him to one part of it. He is good at trades. He's not always great at everything. And, certainly people who have been more accomplished than Howie Roseman as general managers have gotten fired. So I'm not going to sit here and tell you how he shouldn't or should or shouldn't get fired. There's evidence on both sides.
No, and I'm kind of kid, but this is a spot where Howie has done well in the past. He has done a good job at playing his cards in trade. So if you don't like his drafting or you don't like the personal relationships he's built with some of these people, this is the time. Look, there was a time when the fans dubbed this Howie season. They had that much trust in him that he got his own name of a season, and this was part of it, that he got guys in trades. Brandon Brooks, he was able to trade guys off like Byron Maxwell and Kiko Alonso that had bad contracts. So if there is one time of the year where you should trust Roseman, it is how he's playing this Wentz thing. But, I got to ask you, Moshe, I mean, teams are saying that the demands are, they're treating him like he's Matthew Stafford. I mean, should he be doing that?
No, I don't. I don't think so. I don't think that's fair. I know that statistically speaking, over the course of their career, there's probably a lot of similarities between Wentz and Matthew Stafford as far as, playing at high levels, as their numbers would suggest. But Matthew Stafford was never benched before, and I don't know that Matthew Stafford ever had a year like Carson just had there. And recency bias is a big part of trades. Whenever, just think about yourself in fantasy, football, basketball, whatever. You are always afraid to draft that guy who's coming off a pretty lousy year, even if that guy has a pretty consistent record. It's just always that sits with you. Is this guy ever going to be what he was again? And I'm sure that, in real life, those concerns are out there too. I do think, take a team like the Colts. I've been told that the Colts don't see it as so risky because they have a good coaching familiarity there. They have Frank Reich. They have Press Taylor. They have a great offensive line. So I don't know that they necessarily see this as risky as maybe the Chicago Bears or another team that might be involved, but it's still nonetheless a guy coming off a pretty bad year, which means you have to put a lot of energy into rebuilding him, and there's just no guarantee that you're going to get what you once saw from Carson Wentz.
I forget if we brought this up on Monday or not, but would putting Ertz in a deal with Wentz make it more interesting?
No, Hunter, the Eagles will not take Carson to Micah Parsons at number 8. We talk about this all the time. No, I'm just kidding. I think it would be smart. I have no idea if Zach Ertz's name's his name has come up in the discussion of a trade. But I do think it would be smart if you're the Colts, knowing that both Wentz and Ertz are probably going to be on the outs, to try to put together a package and see what you can. I mean, the Colts do have some decent tight ends, right? They had the Mo Ali Cox guy, the former basketball player who caught a bunch of touchdowns for them. I don't know how many yards he had, but he seemed to flash in the touchdown production area. And then they have, do they still have Jack Doyle? I think he was with the team last year. But I think Ertz would give them something more of a consistent target at the tight end position.
Do you
think
that adding Ertz to a deal brings back more in return? Or is that just, hey, we know?
I was just about to say.
Right. We know you want to get rid of Ertz's contract, so it's almost like you throw him in because we're helping you out.
Yeah, I mean, the Ertz contract doesn't hurt the Eagles that much because the guaranteed money is pretty much off. There's not a lot. But the same factor that you have with Carson Wentz, you have with Zach Ertz, and that he's coming off a year which was not very good. And I know he was hurt for a lot of it, but even before he got hurt, he was not having a very good year. He was not as productive. He's a player, not an old player, but 30-year-old player. So I don't know that all of a sudden you're getting that extra first-round pick that you're looking for because Zach Ertz is involved in the deal. I don't think it's as much of a sweetener, but it could be something that just helps make the Colts stand out as the best trade partner.
It's not possible that, or is it possible that this doesn't go down and Carson Wentz is back next year? I mean, what are the chances in your mind that is actually the case?
You know, I know I've heard it out there that that's a possibility, and I'm of the belief, and this is just me speaking, and of course from speaking to people around the league, but no one's telling me one way or another, yes or no. But I'm of the belief that they're too far over the bridge here, that they are past the point of no return. The name's been out there. The teams have been out there. People need quarterbacks, you know, even if it's not the Colts or the Bears, maybe it gets rekindled with another team and it's not as much compensation. But I just don't see how Carson Wentz can come back to this team at this point unless major fences are mended. And I don't have the knowledge if they're trying to mend the fence. And I would say if they're trying to deal them, I'm not sure they're trying to mend the fence.
If they said today, Howie Roseman has stepped down, do you think Wentz would seriously, like almost like Clintack did, he just stepped down? If Howie Roseman said, I'm stepping down, do you think Wentz would change his tune? You know,
I don't know, Mike, because, as much as
Moshe, and you can maybe, I feel like most people feel that Roseman is the problem. No? Or is Laurie the problem? Does he not Laurie? Does he not like Roseman? Does he not like both of them?
Well, obviously, Doug was part of the problem. I mean, that's
gone.
not, and he's gone now, right? But Carson still doesn't want to come back. So, is Jeffrey Lurie part of the problem? I have not heard that. So is it just the way the organization does business? I mean, he hasn't felt supported for a variety of reasons. We've talked about that on the podcast. You can go back to at one point, Michael Silver's report that he has poor, sloppy practice habits. What I would have to know to really answer that question, Mike, is if he's blaming some of this lack of support on Howie and Howie only. So I don't know that. My guess would be perhaps there would be some saving grace if they had a different general manager in, but I don't know that for a fact.
All right. One of the reports out today as well kind of insinuates that the Colts have asked for a player along with Wentz to kind of help close the gap there, but that Chicago is growing impatient with the Eagles. It sounds like, Moshe, and you can speak to this maybe more, that the two teams that sound like the best fits are starting to get a little impatient with you. So it's almost those two teams, it's either you got to figure out something quick or you might be out of suitors.
Right. Now, it makes me wonder, is that real? Not that I'm sure it was said. I don't think the report is made up. But if you're the Bears, are you purposely saying you're impatient because you're trying to, give the Eagles the inclination that you might be looking in another direction for a quarterback? I thought it was very interesting yesterday that there was a report that the Colts are all of a sudden having their focus on Matt Ryan in Atlanta. So I don't know if you guys saw that, but that came from Dan Dakich from Indianapolis Sports Talk Radio. And that's the same guy who...
Former West Virginia basketball coach for 10 minutes.
Yeah, there you go. It's the same guy who had Chris Ballard on his radio show last week, I believe. So I think that was fairly interesting, and that could just, again, be all part of the gamesmanship. We see it all the time, and it's hard to know what's real, what's being fabricated and pushed out there, and or both. Maybe the Bears are impatient, but they don't mind saying it to see if it forces the issue.
Should they feel pressured considering this needs to get done before the new league year starts?
I would think so. I would think that the Eagles don't want to have to pay all the money that kicks in. I know that's been said that if they don't get what they want, you can still hold on to them. You can bring them back and then do what you've done in the past, and that's wait for a quarterback to get hurt, and all of a sudden you got a shiny new Carson Wentz who's, you can talk about how rebuilt he is because everybody looks good in OTAs at training camp and maybe pawn him off. But I feel personally that Howie would like to get this done sooner than later. And I think that's better for the organization. I don't know that you want this hovering over you all spring and summer long.
I can't imagine that you would. And as you said, you can't put the toothpaste back in the tube. Let me ask you this. If they legitimately had a first-round pick on the table, do you think that deal would be done by now?
No, I think that there's a chance they could get a first. There's also a chance, by the way, that they won't. They'll get multiple twos or something.
No, there's a chance that they could. I guess my question is, if they already did get a first, would Howie say, you're going to give me a first? I'll take that deal.
No, I mean, I guess what I'm saying is I think it's possible that they already do have that, but Howie is trying to hold out to at least get more, and that his fallback is to take that first. I don't think a first makes him just do it right this second. I think eventually he'll probably wind up just settling for that and maybe a little less, maybe 2 twos, or maybe that first is next year and not this year. It all depends, but I don't think he's going to just jump at that kind of offer. I could be wrong, but I don't see it.
Yeah, no, I mean, I think at this point, the Bears and the Colts are both in that same range, 20 and 21. I mean, at the end of the day, it sounds like, hey, if you had the 20th pick or the 21st pick on the table right now, wouldn't you kind of be like, I don't know that I'm getting much better than that. I don't know. Maybe he feels like he's getting more calls than we think he's getting.
Well, that's just the thing. I think that those are fair offers, either of those picks, and I think Howie knows that inside, if that's being offered. But there's no shame in just trying to make it seem like you have a little bit more. If you've got the thing you have when you're Howie in this case is you at least have enough interest from more than one team so that you can create the perception of bidding war or leverage. The Bears are going to give me their first and a player. So now you go back to the Colts and you're like, well, your first is a little bit lower. It's basically the same, not the same, but can you offer a better player than this guy? Or can you offer me a better pick to sweeten it? And you play one versus the other until one of the teams calls your bluff, which may be going on right now with both the Bears and the Colts.
There was a time that we thought Joe Banner's leash was so long and it would be there forever, and he was eventually gone. Does this feel like with Howie, he is now at that point where he's at that road and he can either go left or right, and what happens here in the next couple of years could be the downfall of Howie, or it could be the complete opposite and he kind of rebuilds himself again? But does this feel like that moment where maybe that leash isn't as long depending on what happens next year and maybe the year following?
I think so, Hunter. I mean, look, it's a very weird subject when I talk to people who are in the know. Some tell me that, Jeffrey relies on Howie so much to navigate the league, to understand what's going on out there, for head coaching searches, that he'll never fire him. But like you said, you heard that about Joe Banner as well. Other people would have told me in the past year and a half that Jeffrey, wants to make sure everything is a smooth ship and he sees what's going on and he he's not as in love with Howie as maybe it's perceived to be. I just know, look, everybody has an expiration date at some point. I can guarantee you, if the Eagles have a losing season next year and then maybe another one, that's going to come back down on someone. I don't think Howie is untouchable. I know a lot of people think that, but again, you go back to how Jeffrey fired Joe Banner. I don't think anybody is unfireable.
I would agree that no one's unfireable. I we talk about how much value does Lurie place on the success that this team has had, that Roseman's been a part of that. We talk about it a lot. They've had one back-to-back losing season in 20 years. How many franchises can say that? We've only had one back-to-back losing season. They very few infrequently have losing seasons, and yet people think that they got the worst GM, the worst coach, the worst, of everything. And they're like, you're Jeffrey Lurie saying, all we've done is win. We might not have won the Super Bowl, but we're constantly winning. Like, what more do you want from us? So that's why.
But think about that, right? Andy Reid, how long did he coach? How successful was he? Eventually, at the end, it became a situation where Jeffrey felt like, just like with Joe Banner, it's better for the franchise to move on. He is very conscious of public relations. And now I'm not saying that drives his decisions, but the whole organization is. And right now, I think you would argue, even in past losing years, there's probably more public disappointment in Howie Roseman now than there has ever been. So factor that in, and factor in that Jeffrey tends to look at the micro and the macro. So he could do exactly what you're saying, Mike. Continue to look at the macro and look at all of the winning that they've done in general over 20 years. He could look at the micro and say, well, I guess Howie, since coming back from banishment from Chip, right? It's been 7 years. What are they? 4 in the playoffs, 3 out, or 3 in the playoffs, 4 out? It's something like that. It's not nearly as successful in the micro except for the Super Bowl, of course. But if you parlayed it out 20 years, and he could also just look at it and say, Howie has been great, just like Andy was great and Joe was great, but I've reached the point where I need a fresh perspective. He fired a guy who won a Super Bowl. So I think it's fair to say that he could fire at some point in his tenure here. He could fire Howie Roseman.
If the Colts and Bears are no longer a part of this, can they put the toothpaste back in the tube?
Man, if the Colts and Bears move on, there's still teams that are looking for quarterbacks. The Jets may be looking to move on from Sam Darnold. I've heard the Niners being involved with looking around as far as Garoppolo is concerned. Who knows what's going to happen with the Texans. A couple of teams are probably going to draft a quarterback there at the top 5 or 10 of the draft, whether it's Atlanta, whether it's the Jets, and then may want to move on from what they've got and maneuver, and it kind of opens up the league. So I still think that there will be a dance partner, but the point would be, if you don't get anything done with the Colts and the Bears, you start to wonder exactly what kind of value they will get in return for Carson Wentz.
Right. That's the question I would have is, do those two teams, are they willing to give up the most? If you're starting to go to other teams, do you start to say, yeah, we're interested, but now we're only, like we talked about this the other day. If you end up making a trade with like San Francisco and getting Garoppolo back, would you rather just try to fix Wentz and try again with Wentz, or take Garoppolo?
It depends. If I can convince Carson to let bygones be bygones, then I would probably try to do that. If it's the writing's on the wall that he just wants out, then it becomes a very untenable situation. You still have the leverage, Mike, right? You could still say, too bad, you're not getting out, report to camp, or else you're going to lose a whole lot of money in fines. But that's not healthy, and that's not good for the organization.
Do they, though? Like, there are people out there that think the Eagles are losing leverage here.
Well, there's a difference between losing leverage in a trade, right, and losing leverage just overall in your situation with the quarterback. They have the leverage. They can literally sit there and say, Carson, if we don't trade you and you don't show up, you're going to lose a massive amount of money. He can pull Le'Veon Bell and say, hey, I've made a massive amount of money already on this contract. I'll take the year off. I don't know. Leverage is as good as literally the day that you're talking about it and the decision that someone is willing to make to exercise what they've got. So obviously it wouldn't be good for the Eagles if Carson looked at his funds and said, you know what, I don't mind sitting out a year. But it's not good for Carson to be coming off a terrible year and then to miss another year of football. How good is that for him when his contract has to be restructured wherever he goes next? So, again, leverage is also in the eye of the beholder.
Yeah, that's a good point. And we were kind of trying to figure this out earlier. What would the reaction be if Carson Wentz came back to play at Lincoln Financial Field in another uniform? Do you think that the fans that think that it's all the organization's fault would give him like a, yeah, we're happy that you're back and we want you to, well, maybe not succeed because it would be against the Eagles, but would he be booed heavily and criticized insanely? Do you think that there would be some respect involved? How do you think it would play out?
I suspect there will be a mixture of cheers and boos, and there's a lot to find out. Like, let's say he gets traded and he does a press conference and he slams Eagles fans or he slams people that Eagles like. It all depends on the words that come out of his mouth when he finally does talk.
He's probably going to say, I got to be better. right?
Yeah, probably. I'm guessing he's not going to really say anything so lightning rodish that everybody's going to be like, "Oh my God, I can't believe Carson Wentz said that." But he will be judged on what he says nonetheless.
This is interesting. Nonetheless, obviously, we continue to keep our eyes on it. The Inside the Birds podcast drops tomorrow morning. They're on the Monday, Thursday schedule now for the Inside the Birds podcast. So make sure you check out the latest tomorrow morning at 6 a.m. I want to ask you, Todd Mcshea's latest mock draft, Jamar Chase goes number 6 to Philly. The reason that's interesting is because all three wideouts were on the board at 6, and they went with Chase of the pick of the litter. Would that be something you think Eagles fans would be okay with?
Wow. How many quarterbacks did he have going in the top 5 there? Wow. All 4? 1, 2, 3, 4 quarterbacks?
5 was the tackle, and then Chase went to the Eagles. And then he had the 3 receivers. Boom, boom, boom. 6,
Right.
7, 8.
Right. Yeah. Well, that does seem like at that point, it's advantageous for the Eagles if assuming they're going ahead with Jalen Hurts, that, the best skill position players fall to them. And then it's best player available or that fits your scheme. I do think a guy like Chase would be good for them just because he's very well-rounded. You don't have to worry about per se, like Devontae Smith being too light or getting hurt or anything like that. He's a physical receiver. He does everything well. At that point, I think you're just blessed to be able to choose between all of those 3 guys. So I could see that. I could definitely see that happening.
Then you're leaving yourself in position to say that you picked the wrong one.
Well, that's a good point. If you went with the cornerback, right? If you went with Surtain, nobody's going to say, "Oh, I can't believe you passed on like J.C. Horn or somebody else like that." I guess. But
here though is people were pissed because you went with the TCU receiver instead of the LSU receiver. Now I'm going with the LSU receiver. What do you want me to do? Go to the Big 12?
The Alabama one.
Alabama guy.
Yeah, exactly. But it's just
funny.
funny.
At the end of the day, you're skipping on another national champion. All right.
The last time Jamar Chase played, they won the national championship. Remember, he opted out. What about that? The fact that he opted out this year, Parsons opted out too. I guess you wouldn't have a problem with him.
I have no problem with him because I'm a Penn State fan, but I just don't see the Eagles drafting a middle linebacker. I guess he's kind of being considered one of those tweener now, like Isaiah Simmons types who can possibly play safety. I don't know. I watched him at Penn State and I thought he's like a great downhill linebacker. I know he can run, but I don't know if he can play that hybrid. And that's for, my intel gathering over the next few months. But I can't imagine them doing it anyway, as long as Howie Roseman is still in charge. Although I will say this, and we don't have the information yet, but we really need to find out what the preferences in style and scheme are for both Nick Sirianni and Jonathan Gannon. Gannon's going to run a 4-3, but some 4-3 teams do place more emphasis on linebacker than others. So if he's really big into linebackers, can he be the one to convince Howie Roseman of what Jim Schwartz could not, which was to take a linebacker really high in the first round? I guess we'll see.
All right. Football at 4, powered by the Inside the Birds podcast. Geoff Mosher, our guest today. Carson Wentz is still an Eagle. We'll find out the latest, of course, throughout the next coming days, weeks, hours, months. Who knows when Carson might be traded, but it seems that we do still think it is going to happen. So keep it locked here for Football at 4, powered by the Inside the Birds podcast. And make sure you listen tomorrow morning at 6 a.m. to the latest edition of Inside the Birds with Geoff Mosher and Adam Kaplan. All right, Moshe, take care, man.
You guys rock. Good stuff today, man.
All right, like August appeared via the Boardwalk Honda hotline. This is the Sports Bash. It is 97.3 ESPN. And don't forget, you can watch the show live on our website, 973ESPN.com. And we have a lot to still do today, including the Phillies. I want to get into some Phillies stuff today because they made two interesting signings today, actually. But at 973ESPN.com right now, I have 3 signings they can make to help them make the playoffs. They made one of those today. Kinda. We'll explain coming up. Sports Bash Football at 4 is brought to you by Dr. Lyle M. Back for everything from skincare to cosmetic surgery. Go to ilovelylback.com or call 856-MAKEOVER for Dr. Lyle M. Back, proud sponsor of Football at 4. All right, when we come back, we got plenty more for you, including a little Philly stuff. We're going to get into this Wentz stuff, too. You can continue to post your comments on the video stream or hit us up on the text board, 609-403-0973. And don't forget, watch the show live at 97.3ESPN.com. Yeah, watch the show live on our website, 973ESPN.com. Mike and Brodes with you till 6 o'clock tonight. We're going to talk a little baseball later with Frank, by the way. Frank Close will join us at 5:30 tonight because the Phillies made a couple of moves today. Now, one of them, they brought in former All-Star outfielder Matt Joyce. Made an All-Star game with the Rays, I think, back in 2011. And they've also signed another bullpen arm. Now, this one's kind of interesting, Brodes, because their bullpen, obviously, historically bad. They signed reliever Brandon Kintzler to a one-year deal. Now, most people might be like, who the hell is that? Well, he was the closer last year for the Miami Marlins, who were a playoff team last year. He also pitched pretty well with the Cubs the year before that. So I don't know that he's going to walk right into the closer job, Kintzler, but he's a guy who they have a couple of options now as the closer. I don't think any of them are great, but they got a couple of options where last year they had none.
Yeah, no, I'm with you on that, and I think this is definitely a good one. Now, it says here, Ken Rosenthal said that he actually turned down a major league deal from the Marlins for a chance to make more money in Philadelphia, even though his terms is a minor league deal.
Yeah, well, if you saw the Phillies bullpen, you'd try to get that deal too.
Yeah, I'm with you. Yeah, you get a significant chance to kind of.
We're going to give you a chance to make more money. All you have to do is make our bullpen.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. I love it though. I think it's the funny thing is Ricky Bo last year during a post game during one of his fantastic rants that he had, pretty much took a shot at the Marlins and who they were. And then Kintzler was a guy who was outspoken back towards Ricky Bo, and now they're going to be on the same squad.
Well, I think it's more like, who are the Marlins? Who are these guys? Why do you constantly lose to this team? Like, I think it's just like the metaphor of how do you lose to the Marlins? Like, we have this thought in our head that they're the Marlins. They stink. Like, nobody should be worse than the Marlins, right? And you were. Like,
you were. There's no doubt about it.
How many people in the listening audience had any idea who Brandon Kintzler even is?
Oh, I mean, there's probably, I would say 99.9% of people didn't know who he was.
Exactly. So that's the thing is you got a guy that no one's ever heard of shutting you down and being a part of a team that's beating you. And you're like, how does this team constantly keep beating us? And it's because your bullpen was historically bad. Now you've got somebody from that bullpen.
I don't know why I do this, but for other sports, for example, we started the show talking about the Sixers. I want to see it in the playoffs. I want to see, and that's just how I am with basketball, and I feel the same way with the Flyers hockey right now, and that's just kind of how I am. But with baseball, I always get sucked into thinking that they're going to be better than what they are every year. It's like, oh, I think that they can maybe do something. Like right now, I'm telling myself, well, can they make that last wild card team? In what world should I be thinking that? There's no way I should, but I do. I don't know why. It's just for baseball. I mentioned I love the 10 o'clock starts with baseball. I do. I don't know why. I'm a weirdo with this sport. I really am.
Look, they can make the playoffs. And look, there was a report today. This is kind of interesting that we can kind of get in this. And Frank's going to join us in about an hour. We'll kind of get a little deeper. We'll get a little deeper into it with Frank coming up. And one of the things that he mentioned that was mentioned today, I guess Joe Girardi spoke today, and he mentioned that Gene Segura is going to open up the season at second base, not Scott Kingery, that Kingery is essentially going to go back to that super utility role. So that's one thing. The other thing that was mentioned today that I thought is newsworthy to kind of bring out is, I guess it was Dave Dombrowski who said that the team has still not decided what to do with Odubel Herrera.
Yeah, I thought that was really interesting. I pretty much figured that was just a done deal. That was, we're done with you. You did what you did, but maybe, and I'm not saying this is right or wrong, I really don't know how to feel on it, to be honest with you. I obviously don't like the situation that we're even in with it, but maybe he showed the Phillies organization something over the last handful of years where he really made a commitment to improve himself. Like, that's the only way I could imagine them being willing to take him back would be if he made this real life commitment decision to go through some sort of counseling and to really prove this is who I am, a changed human. I'm not, like I said, I don't know how to really feel about that.
Yeah.
I'm not saying it's right or wrong. I'm just trying to say, if you are going to think about bringing him back, you would have to imagine something like that happened.
Well, keep in mind two things. One, and I am not an advocate of bringing him back. I said the day that whatever happened, when it happened, that I would have just cut ties with them.
To be clear, I feel the same way.
Yeah, I was at that point where I was just like, you know what? And I guess one of the questions that slips into your subconscious is, well, Herrera's not all that good. What's the, just get rid of him, prove a point. I don't think the level of player should come into play here. I think his contract certainly did. But that being said, he has not played. He's 29 years old. He has not played in a game since going back to early 2019. He only played 39 games. So he's almost missed 2 almost full seasons.
Would we even be having this conversation if you didn't have a hole in center field? If it wasn't the Hazley and Roman Quinn dub, you would think we'd still have it?
I think so because of the contract.
Financially.
Because there's a reason why he's still here. They have to cover the contract that they signed. He's due around $13.8 million between his salary between now and then he has club options for 22 and 23. So they still owe him a decent amount of money. That's why they didn't cut ties with the guy.
Yeah. Yeah, it's weird. I was shocked when I saw that news come out, as if they're even questioning it. And that's where I'm trying to think, well, if they're questioning it, something had to have happened behind the scenes that we are unaware of. Because if nothing changed, it's hard for me to think that they just thought, oh, time will fix things, and we're going to bring back the same guy after doing what he did. That's the only reason why I bring that up. But it definitely adds a different dynamic here, and who knows what they're going to do. Does Scott Kingery play center field now? Can he win that everyday role?
I don't know that there's going to be an everyday center fielder. I think he will just be part of a three-headed monster out there. Plus, keep in mind, last year you had games where, and I think Matt Joyce being brought in will be a part of this as well, where Andrew McCutchen was the DH because of the knee. They didn't want him playing in the outfield. They didn't want him playing defense. Joyce will take over that Jay Bruce role. But I also think that you'll have Kingery available. That means to play center field now because he won't be at second base. That means you use Hazley some in left field. You could turn into a platoon where you have Hazley against righties, McCutchen against lefties. It gives you a little bit more versatility because one problem with Jay Bruce was he wasn't a great defensive outfielder.
No, he was not. Another thing, too, Didi needs a night off or Gene Segura needs a night off. You're going to slide Scott Kingery right in there. And I know some look at the COVID-19 situation for Scott Kingery and say that's a big reason why he had that downfall year. And that could play a role for sure. He had that bad of a season that it's possible that COVID-19 and everything he fought through early on impacted his season. I also feel, though, that he's just not the guy that we might have thought he was going to be when he got him that contract. Scott Kingery.
Kingery.
Yeah.
Well, and we'll talk to Frank about this at 5:30 tonight. He did have COVID last year. It impacts everybody a little differently. We saw what happened to Seth Curry. Like, he had it, then he came back, and he wasn't himself. He's just kind of getting back to himself. It's been about a month for Seth Curry. I don't know how much that really affected Scott Kingery. Maybe he was affected a little differently than other people.
Yeah, I'm kind of, he is what he is kind of guy. And I like the fact that you have versatility. I think it's useful to have a guy that can play third base, shortstop, second base, center field. Like, he can play a lot of areas, which is good. I just expected a little bit more out of him when we first heard the name Scott
You
Kingery.
expected a lot out of him. Why?
Well, because they gave him that contract.
Because they gave him the contract.
Yeah.
If they didn't give him the contract, you're not thinking that much of him. He has been disappointing to me. Now, I was down in spring training the first year in 2018 and saw him play and was like, dude, this kid he's legit. He's the real deal. And for whatever reason, they gave him the contract. And I think they saw kind of maybe what I saw was, dude, this kid's just, he had the feel like, I don't want to say Utley, but like that kind of like grinder, always hustling, always makes the right move. And he has just, for whatever reason, never really found his footing in that season. The second year, he got off but he hit 258. He had 19 home runs.
That's what stands out to me. Yeah, the pop that second year was definitely a difference maker.
Yeah, and I don't know why I've been disappointed by him, but much like you say, I have optimism that I think the Phillies can make the playoffs. I have optimism that I think Kingery can be one of those guys that ends up turning things around. Now, maybe the organization disagrees and they just see him as a super utility guy at this point. Maybe.
Wonder if he's a guy that maybe you can use as trade value or something.
Well, keep in mind now, too, you have Didi, who they just they announced that today, that he's back on a 2-year, $28 million deal to play shortstop. But you can give Didi a day off with Kingery. You can give Segura a day off with Kingery. You can give Bohm a day off with Kingery.
And Reese, because you could put Bowman first, and then he could play third.
Right. He could play center. I'm imagining because he can play center, that means Hashley can play left field. So Kingery will probably get enough playing time to give him another shot here, I would think. I don't think you're going to see him just not be a part of the everyday nine. I think they're going to try to find ways to keep him getting regular at bats.
I agree with you.
More so than Phil Gosselin, who
disappointing. Guy went to Los Angeles, playing for the
out,
Angels. Huh? Yeah, come on. That was a hell of a run he had last year.
It was. That was some run that he had.
It was fun. Loved it.
But Kingery, though, played 36 games last year. He only hit 159. He was terrible. I mean, just awful last year. But you wonder how much of that was COVID.
I called him Scotty 02 Kingery. Every time, I swear to God, he'd get up to the plate, he'd fall 02.
Yeah, but you know what, though? You're right. And he had the look in his face of just utter no confidence. Like, every time he strikes out, he looks back at the pitcher like, how did you do that?
Yeah, same with Reese when he went through that funk. It was similar. You could tell by the body language. It's like when a guy walks up to the free throw line. You could tell if he wants to be there or not. Scott Kingery was sort of phased by the moment, and there were times where Rhys Hoskins, and that's another guy. What the hell can we expect out of Rhys Hoskins? I have no clue. I have no idea.
I don't even know if he'll be ready to play.
That's a good point. I haven't really followed much up on where he is in terms of rehab. Have you seen anything recently?
I did see a video of him about a week or so ago that suggested that he was planning on hoping to be ready by opening day.
Okay.
So I guess maybe he might be back, but I'm not 100% sure. We'll talk to Frank about that coming up in about 45 minutes. But look, there's three things the Phillies can still do. They can still add to this bullpen. They just added Kinsler today, so that's another veteran arm. Bradley's a major upgrade. He doesn't have a ton of closer experience. He has 28 saves in 255 games. I would imagine he would get the ball in the ninth inning. They got Alvarado from Tampa Bay, Coonrod from San Francisco. They brought in Nova and Anderson, and I would imagine that if Anderson doesn't win the job in the rotation, that he could possibly slip to the bullpen. I think Brogdon's a guy. I like him a lot. I think they can utilize his fastball. I mean, use him possibly in a setup role. Rosenthal's still available, so I think they could still maybe add another bullpen piece to this thing.
Is David Hale someone they brought back as well from last year too?
He is,
right?
But he stinks.
Yeah, he's brutal. He is for sure. But look, we talk about it all the time. Relievers have years where they're great out of nowhere. Adam Morgan at one point had a stretch where no one had an earned run against him in like a whole couple months, and I was like, wow, look at this, Adam Morgan. Everyone has those stretches. So
the starting pitching, there's three guys they were connected to last week: Paxton, Odorizzi, and Walker. If they bring in one of those guys, I would feel a lot better, because then you get Howard, Velasquez, Anderson, Moore, and then one of those three guys competing for two spots. I think Ranger Suarez is another guy to keep an eye on. Remember, he got COVID last year too.
And he was out for a while.
He was.
Like a long time. We were like, what is happening with him? That's how long he was knocked out for.
And then you have to find another outfield option, because I think running it back with Hashley and Quinn is cause for concern, and they kind of did that today by telling us that Segura is going to play second. Kind of the message is, hey, you now have Kingery. Now, is that three-headed monster in center field good enough for you?
If you fixed all of if you constantly attack the bullpen and your hole is center field, like if you told me they ran it with the three-headed monster in center field, but they really made a conscious effort to attack the bullpen, then I could be satisfied. Because you're not going to fix everything. I mean, that's just too much to really do in one offseason. I guess you have to live with it.
Sports Bash Live, 97.3 ESPN. Hey, I want to tell you about my friends over at PropSwap.com. Look, if you're not using the PropSwap app yet, you're really not a smart prop bettor. All you need to do is download the PropSwap app or go to PropSwap.com, and it's real simple. If you're someone who bets futures, or if you bet like a parlay that has multiple legs to the parlay, a 3-teamer, a 4-teamer, a 5-teamer, you could buy that ticket and then sell it on PropSwap for whatever you want. You set the price. So if you have a ticket for a futures bet, a buddy of mine bought Justin Herbert to win the Rookie of the Year at plus 3,000 when the season started. He wasn't even the starting quarterback yet. You know how much he just cashed in that ticket for? $7,500. What he could have done is sold it on PropSwap for even more than that if he got in on that a little while earlier. So do what I would do. If you have a prop bet, go to PropSwap.com or use the PropSwap app and check that out at PropSwap.com, where America buys and sells sports bets. It's the Sports Bash. I'm Mike Gill. This is 97.3 ESPN. Don't forget, you can watch the show live at 97.3ESPN.com. Every day, go to our website and watch the show right on your television, laptop, or phone. It's the Bash. Coming up, Frank Close at 5:30. We'll talk some more Phils. Hey, watch the show live right now at 97.3ESPN.com. Now, we've got a ton of comments that I never really got a chance to get to, but we'll try to pop some of these up on the screen and go through them real fast. Well, one of the things about the Phillies that I do want to touch on that before we I was just talking to Frank off the air here. He's going to be coming up at 5:30 because I told him, we're about this Kingery Segura thing, and he's like, I kind of figured they were going to do that. And I said to him, what about playing Bowman first, Segura at third, Kingery at second, and then Hoskins, if he wasn't ready? That's the problem. I think if Hoskins hadn't got hurt, do you think they would have tried to trade him?
Possibly.
Like, would that have been their offseason move?
Possibly, if you got someone who can pitch. But what is his value? Clearly, there's teams that would be interested in a guy who can crush a lot of home runs. But it depends on what you're kind of looking for. Now, we were throwing the hypothetical out before the injury that if you could trade Rhys Hoskins for a starting pitcher, would you do that? My answer to that is yes, of course. So if you could have landed a starting pitcher, then yeah, I would have been very, very supportive.
Yeah,
of that.
I have not been a big Hoskins guy. He has not been, other than the 18 home run, 50 game stretch. He has, to me, been somewhat of a disappointment.
It's like the highs are high, but the lows are just abysmal, And I know that's baseball in 162. You're going to go through stretches, but when he does get a hold of them, he'll go through a 5, 6, 7, 8 game stretch where he's putting them out of the ballpark, and it's great. Batting behind. Well, the problem is
part of it, bros. I don't like I don't like where they hit him
because he walks, and that's the thing. It's like we have a guy who can crush you an obnoxious amount of homers, but because of how much he walked and because Bryce Harper hit behind him, they really valued that. And it's like he would look to walk, but you got to look to hit a homer. You're that special guy, right? I mean, you're looking to walk too much.
Yeah, I don't love him hitting in the 2-hole.
It crushed him,
and it's like. He's the wrong guy in that,
because his OBP was so great.
Well, because he gets on base, but he doesn't have a lot of speed. He clogs up the bases, so he's not a great on base kind of guy that you want. You want him to be the guy that drives the guys in. Great, now he's on second base because he hit a double, rather than him being on first base because he walked.
Yeah, I'm with you. But the way they valued it last year was, well, Rhys Hoskins will get on base, and Bryce Harper's batting behind him.
Well, the fact though that Kapler did that, and then Girardi did it too.
Well,
I was a little surprised.
Matt Klentak. The GMs hand those cards down and tell you what to do at this point. It's really how baseball is kind of at now. The managers have lost I'm not going to say they do nothing, but the power that they used to have, nowhere even close to where it is now.
God, that makes me sick.
Yeah, the GMs have a lot to say, but maybe Dave Dombrowski is different, and he said that he wants to mix scouting with analytics, and he clearly brings back a little bit of old school. So I wonder if he allows Joe Girardi to have more of a feel of the game than most would if they were in position of power. Maybe Dombrowski looks at Joe Girardi as a guy that I can look at and trust to make baseball decisions out there.
Is Sam Fold going to write the lineup card out?
I doubt it. I doubt it.
I mean, seriously, if we say this is what baseball has become, is Dave Dombrowski going to write the lineup?
That is more of a reasonable question. Would Dave Dombrowski be the guy to do it? And he is an older generation guy, so it's possible that he is going to allow Joe Girardi to make those calls.
You think that he will dial that back?
It's possible.
And,
I do think it's possible.
Let
I really
Girardi kind of hey, Girardi's won a Super Bowl, a World Series. Let him be the guy who makes those decisions. He knows these guys.
I really do think that that's on the table, and I think we'll be able to tell. Don't you? Do you think we'll be able to tell if it's different feel?
I don't know. You think if all of a sudden Hoskins is hitting 5th, 6th, 7th?
I think you will notice it if they go to a bullpen guy that's unorthodox to today's game. If they go to a certain guy where the matchups maybe aren't as strong as something else, but they have this feel on a guy and they think maybe right now is the best situation, even though the numbers won't support it, maybe that's when we realize they're going against it.
Is it weird that they're literally bringing back the same roster, lineup?
I don't think it is.
You'd never see that.
Well, it wasn't a problem, though. That wasn't the problem. They scored runs.
I know. I'm saying, well, it goes back to what that guy said when he texted in a while back. Their offense was fine. Their starting pitching was okay. It wasn't great. But if they had a half-decent bullpen, they would have made the playoffs. If their bullpen's half-decent this year, do they make the playoffs?
I keep going back to no DH. If that's how this all plays out with the no DH and what they're doing with the playoffs, that all matters.
All right, when we come back, we'll get into some of these comments that have been coming in on the Eagles and Wentz and all that stuff. Plus, we'll get back into the Phillies at 5:30 with Frank Close of 97.3 ESPN.com. Watch the show live on our website. All right, final hour of the show. This hour brought to you by our friends over at Bernie Robbins Jewelers. Shop the Valentine's Day sale now at BernieRobbins.com. It starts today inside the store, or go to BernieRobbins.com/Cupid. All right, Mike Gill, Sports Bash. All right, Brodes. So we got a lot of people commenting throughout the show today on this Carson Wentz stuff. And we know the latest that we have. Look, people have been texting me, what do you know? What do you know? This is the latest we have, all right? Potential trade partners have been unwilling to meet the Eagles' demands for Carson Wentz. Is that a good thing or a bad thing? Are we happy that Howie Roseman is digging his heels in and saying, I'm not just going to give him away? Or are we at the point where just give him away? I don't care what you get for him.
I see it differently. I think that this is just part of the process. I don't think this is Howie doing something wrong. I don't think this is the other side doing anything wrong, trying to push back. Hearing that just tells me, okay, they're going through the part of this business as it's supposed to be done.
All right. Well, then the question the follow-up to that is, people hate Roseman. They want him gone. He's an idiot. He's the worst. He's the problem. Do you separate all that and say, in this moment, I trust what Roseman's doing? Are people out there willing and able to admit that this is something that Roseman actually does well?
Well, I don't know if I necessarily will say I trust him, because I just think he's going to get the best offer he possibly can. Is that going to be good enough? I don't know, because it just depends on how other teams value him. But they're going to get rid of him no matter what. It's just what the best offer is. If that makes sense, which obviously him being good at his job would make it a significantly better package than maybe others would in the trade market. But I don't
think if he does do a good job in this trade, people will give him credit?
No, because they'd say that Wentz's value is Wentz's value, and he just pulled the trigger on what was offered. You know what I mean? That's how people would view it. Is he didn't do anything. People would trade for Wentz because Wentz is good. That's how people would view it. And depending on the package, I might fall in that category. If a package comes out where I think that is reasonable for what Carson Wentz is worth, is that just Wentz's worth speaking for itself? At what point did Howie do something? And at what point is it, this is what Wentz is? And this is the value for Carson Wentz. You know what I mean, though?
Yeah. I mean,
if he gets 2 firsts, okay. I understand. If he gets a first, I guess we can kind of have that debate.
This comment here from Daz Deals, he's watching on YouTube. He says, there's zero consistency with this organization now. He says, now, okay. I was going to say, the one thing that this organization has had is consistency. That's the one thing the Eagles had, is everybody in this listening audience could consistently say the Eagles were going to be good. Fair or unfair?
Yeah, back in the day, for sure. Since Chip Kelly, it's been a little bit of a rocky road. Even though one Super Bowl was won during that time, I think in terms of inconsistency, where it's Chip Kelly's the guy, Howie Roseman's in the back door, Doug Peterson's in, now he's gone, now Nick Sirianni's involved, and now, as of late, yes, it has shaken up a bit. But in the years past, you did have that consistency.
I mean, even with that, since Chip Kelly has been here, going back to 2013, they have had double-digit wins 3 times. They won 9 games twice. So you still have won. You were still a consistent team. You might not have liked the consistency, but 10 wins, even 7-7. You're not 4-12. I mean, 10 wins, 13, 9-9. They still were there was consistency of a winning team.
Yeah, but I don't think you've ever seen in the NFL a GM hire his 4th head coach.
Well, I mean, that people that's another misconception is, that Howie Roseman's picking the head coach. I mean, the owner picks the head coach.
Sure, but it's still, there hasn't been a GM in place with an organization to do that 4 times, still be a part of the organization to make that type of move with the owner. Not that he makes you're right, he doesn't make it, but for the same GM to be in place is telling.
This would be the 3rd head coach.
Well, it would be Chip Kelly, Doug Peterson, Nick Sirianni. Okay, but he was here with Andy Reid, no?
Who? Howie?
Yeah.
Yeah, well, he didn't hire Andy.
Well,
he had nothing to do with that.
Sure. Okay, the 3rd head coach. But that's still
Andy
not
Reid
something
got hired
that
in 99 or 99, and Howie was not a part of the team.
No, he came right around after that, early 2000s.
But yeah.
But okay, but regardless, still 3 head coach changes for one GM.
The Kelly thing is hard, though, because they did something outside the box with Kelly, and I think they went into that knowing that this could either be the greatest thing and revolutionize the game, or it could blow up in our faces.
But that's still like, I understand they did that, but you doing that and it blowing up in your face is part of making a wrong decision. They're like, okay, they got themselves out of it, or they did this, or they did that, but that still failed, right? Like,
yeah, but that's an organizational
good
philosophy. That is not, I'm counting this as a strike against you as the GM.
Well, he's part of that decision-making, though. Like, you can't just, like, take blame away from Howie in those moments. Even if Laurie has last say, like, that's still all part of the people up top to make that type of decision. Like, he's still part of those conversations.
Yeah, but that's the organizational philosophy that the owner is a part of. That's my point, is the owner is not going to say, I failed, therefore you're getting fired. That's not going to happen. Like, they come together as Jeffrey Lurie, Howie Roseman, whoever else is in that, Don Smolinski, and they say, look, as an organization, this is the route we want to go. Like, we would like to do, like, are we on board with this? Yeah, let's hire Chip Kelly. Like, it might be great, but it might blow up in our face.
Yeah, but someone has to get the blame for that situation.
Yeah, Chip
to go
Kelly.
Down. Well, but yeah, that's
Chip Kelly got the blame.
That would be
he got
wrong.
fired.
That would be wrong, though, if that's the person that gets the blame. The guy who gets fired gets the blame.
No, but as an organization together, they all said, we made a mistake. We're firing Chip Kelly. That's them admitting we made a mistake. They're not going to single one of the three out, though.
But
I mean, you would basically be throwing the guy under the bus.
Just because you admit to making the mistake, it doesn't mean that you don't get a ton of criticism for making the mistake to begin with.
Oh, you could get the criticism, but I'm saying, like, I don't think that the owner holds Roseman at fault for being on board with this decision. It's one of those things. Hey, we're either going to live or die with this thing. We're going to go guns a-blazing, or we're going to go, like, you spend money to make money. I put all this money into this investment and I lost. Well, there's another investment that I put money in and I hit big. Like, they're all on board with that decision. So I don't think the owner is going to single Roseman out and say, it wasn't like Roseman said, this is my grand idea, and he had to sell Laurie. I think Laurie was like, hey, if you can get Chip Kelly to coach this team, I'm on board with that.
Yeah, but I think that's still a little bit flawed, though, because that's like if me and you went in on an idea together and it backfired, but I was in the decision-making with you, like, I still deserve blame for being in that decision with you, even if you're higher up than me. Like, I'm making you Laurie and I'm Howie Roseman in this hypothetical. And me and you come up with this decision to do something and it backfires. I'm still part of the problem of making the decision as me and you together. I'm still part of that problem, even if you're higher up than me.
Yeah, but I don't think that should be a
strike.
Maybe a strike, yes. But I don't in that instance, no, I don't hold it as, because Kelly was such an unknown. It was, and by the way, he was a guy that multiple organizations tried to lure away from college and they couldn't. And if you remember, when they hired Chip Kelly, who got credit for that?
Howie Roseman.
Correct. Everybody talked that Roseman was the guy that convinced him to come to the NFL. No other team could get Kelly to come. Remember, Tampa thought they had to deal with him, and at the last minute, he backed out. And there were rumors of him going to all these other teams. There was all these talks that they wanted Kelly. He couldn't come. He didn't want to come. And that Roseman was the guy that convinced him to come to the NFL. And so, yeah, I mean, I hear what you're saying. Like, okay, that idea blew up in their face, but it's progressive ideas that you take a shot on. You know going in, hey, this might not work. I'm okay with that. Like, if you told me, now Josh is telling me that there are guys, Bill Polian hired 3 head coaches, Jim Morris Sr., Tony Dungy, and Jim Caldwell. So those are 3 guys. He won the Super Bowl with Dungy. They did pretty good with Caldwell as well. Carl Peterson was the GM in Kansas City, hired 4 head coaches. So, I mean, it happens. I mean, but
yeah,
that's
it's
either
rare.
here or there.
Yeah,
right.
It's rare.
But
very rare.
If you said that their idea was to bring back Dick Vermeil, you know, who was like 68 years old at that time, and kind of like what Washington did when they brought Joe Gibbs back the second time. At that point, I would say, I don't think that was a risk worth taking. So therefore, I'm gonna hold that against you a little bit more. This was something that, look, I think most people were on board with. I think most people didn't know what to expect. And I think most people were willing to see, hey, let's see what this Kelly thing is all about in the NFL. You remember that year that before the season started, you didn't know what to think of that team. It was like, I have no expectations because I just don't know what I'm going to see. The team was 4-12 the year before, so you said, man, the team's probably on the way down. I don't know what to expect from this guy.
Even if I understand, like, hey, he's the hot item or whatever the case may be, but at the end of the day, if it doesn't work and it fell the way that it did, regardless of the wins, it was a nightmare situation where you had to pull the plug as the owner. Doesn't matter what you thought before or what you did before or how it all played out. The fact of the matter is it was a disaster. People started flying or getting kicked out of town and this and that, and it was bad. So at the end of the day, no matter what happened leading up to it, it was bad, and someone deserves blame when that happens. And I think that Mosher kind of brought this up the best way with Andy Reid. Andy Reid was a great coach. Me and you both agree with that. The outrage towards him, it was what it was. But towards the end, it was time. So Howie Roseman, I think it is just like the perfect example is to tie it to Andy Reid, where, you know what? He might not be the worst ever like these people are saying they are, but at the end of the day, there is a timeline for someone who, even if they are still good at their job, it's time to move on. And I feel that's kind of where we're at with Howie. No matter if he has more left in the tank or not, it's time to freshen this thing up.
That I don't have a problem
I know
with.
you don't.
If you're telling me that, I look at it differently, though, a GM and a coach. The GM's voice is not the same as the coach. The coach is talking to the players. It's his voice in the locker room. The GM is totally different. That's why a lot of times, they don't just say, hey, you know what, Bill Belichick, I think it's just time to freshen things up here. He's been the GM there, the coach there for 20 years. They don't just say, hey, it's time to change GMs because we think Bill Belichick's getting – and look, guys,
I bet you that conversation intensifies now after Brady leaves.
It might. Mickey Loomis is another guy, and he's very much on the Roseman level where he's not a football guy. He's more of a numbers guy. He's been the GM with the Saints. Oh my God! Since I feel like he's been the only guy who's ever been the GM. When was Loomis hired to be the GM in New Orleans? I mean, I feel like he's been there.
But I also wonder if things start changing
since 2000, right?
If things start changing once Drew Brees is now, what are they going to do? What's the stopgap? Like, what's going to happen? I wonder if all these GMs that we talk about, if things start changing because, well, you don't have Tom Brady and because you don't have Drew Brees, like, will they look different now that they don't have those guys? I'm not saying that will happen. I'm just asking the question, like, will you see that happen around the league where these guys that have been there,
it's a fair question. Like, do we look at the Saints organization now? Before Drew Brees got there, they were a laughingstock. Right? I mean, they were terrible.
Absolutely.
So, but in the Sean Payton era, I guess you can go to, do we look at them as, I don't want to say a model franchise, but as a successful franchise?
Successful in the conversation of they are involved every year, but you can look at it as underwhelming that they only had one Super Bowl with all of those fantastic teams. So in terms of, like, you talk about sustained success and being involved and you have a fight every single year, yeah, from that standpoint, yes. But in terms of...
I hate, though, that the answer is they only have one Super Bowl. Yeah. Like, how many Super Bowls do we want teams to win?
With that type of team, with that type of quarterback, like Aaron Rodgers, if he has one Super Bowl in his entire career, you would look at that as he's so damn good, and those teams were so damn good that he should have more than one.
Right, but again... How many teams have multiples?
I do not think it's ridiculous to think Aaron Rodgers, with his skill set, his career, should be able to come out with more than one. And you look at that as underachieving if he only has one. Okay. Two? I think two. When we had Casey
That's not
Joyner,
the conversation.
Okay,
the point I'm making is how many Super Bowls? Like, we're saying, well, they only won one Super Bowl. Well, every team that we're going to bring up that has success is going to have one.
Well, there's 55 Super Bowls, and Tom Brady's been to 10 of them?
Yeah.
So, I mean, it's not like there's 700 Super Bowls to point from. There's 55.
But that's the point is the Saints have one Super Bowl, and the Packers in the Rodgers era, in the 20 years that we're talking about that the Eagles have been involved here, the Giants have two. I guess Pittsburgh has two. Denver has one. So if you have one, you're ahead of.
Yeah, but your team's not built for that every year. Like the Green Bay Packers were with Aaron Rodgers. The Drew Brees' teams were built for that. Not a lot of these teams don't have a chance right from the jump, so that slices them off.
But that's what I'm saying. So Mickey Loomis has been the GM there since 2000. He's been the only GM they've had since 2000. Those teams were 10-6, 7-9, 9-7, 8-8, 8-8, 3-13, 10-6, 7-9, 8-8. So somewhere in there, and they didn't win one playoff game. They won 2 playoff games in that run there. They won double-digit games twice. There's not a whole level of success. By the way, the
recent teams have been significantly stronger, and they haven't.
Correct, but I'm saying they stuck with him through that 8-year stretch. And then they won the Super Bowl. Okay, now they won the Super Bowl. They go 13-3. They win the Super Bowl. Since the Super Bowl, 11-5, 13-3, 7-9, 11-5, 7-9, 7-9, 7-9, and they still stuck with the guy. 11-5, 13-3.
That doesn't mean that it's right. Just because an organization does it doesn't mean that that's the model.
My question was, do we view the Saints as I don't want to say a model organization, but a good organization?
Yes, you view them as a good organization. Yes. A good organization? Yes. You look at them as a good one.
Right. Okay. So that's one example of a team that has kind of said, look, we got this guy. We're always in play. And I don't even think that the Eagles have had more success than them. They've had 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7,
but their
8,
teams seem to be more
9,
legitimate 10. Super Bowl type teams more than the Eagles. So wins wise, maybe. But in terms of when you look at this team, they have this team that can go legitimately win a Super Bowl. The Saints are more in that conversation over the last handful of years than the Eagles were. So I think that's where it changes because, first off, you're also playing in the NFC East when they're playing in a different division. Not that, look, some of the teams are what they are there, but yeah, I think when you look at the Saints, though, they have more of a Super Bowl full-on team than the Eagles have had.
You got Green Bay. There's another one. They've won 1 Super Bowl in the 20
And
years.
I would view both of those teams as teams that underachieved with their talent. They should have been able to.
That's fine, but they've won 1 Super Bowl, and they had double-digit wins 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14 times in that. I mean, that's pretty damn good, right? And
so
they have won Super Bowl.
So what is but that doesn't mean that's what is that mean to me? That means they underachieved.
So essentially, you're saying you would like the Eagles to be the best organization in all of football.
No, I hate how you take it to the extreme, though. That's not what I'm saying at all. It's fair to say that a team underachieved even if they only won 1 Super Bowl. I don't think that's ridiculous.
I'm not
to
saying
say
that's not fair.
So what's the point?
I'm just saying. I think I'm being pretty clear that
no, it's not clear to me.
That a team is only successful if they win multiple Super Bowls, I think is being unrealistic.
No, I do not think being if I said to you, I think Aaron Rodgers deserves to have more than 1 Super Bowl on his resume, that is not unrealistic.
I'm not saying it's not. I literally just said it's not unrealistic to say that they underachieved. What I said is, but to say that a team, if they don't win more than 1 Super Bowl, is a failure. Like the Green Bay Packers are not a failure, even though they won 1 Super Bowl. You could say they underachieved, but they're
from a business standpoint and all.
They're still a great organization. I think anybody would say I would trade their last 20 years. Most organizations would trade their last 20 years for whatever they just went through, right?
Yes.
So if I was to say, they won 1 Super Bowl in 20 years. They had 14 double-digit seasons. They're a successful franchise.
I understand that, but I think you saying that almost allows you to accept losing when you have a good enough team to win.
I'm not,
and I really do, because there's teams they have a team that can win.
Accept what you're saying. If you were the team that had 1 Super Bowl in 20 years.
You also had one guy carry the last 20 years, which then takes away from a lot of these other teams. The Steelers might not have just the 2 Super Bowls in 20 years if it wasn't for Tom Brady, the greatest quarterback ever.
That's all factors
ever.
in.
Yeah, that's a huge part of this, that you have the greatest quarterback ever to now take away championships.
Which team would you say in the last 20 years has been more successful, Philly or New Orleans?
What are you basing it off of? Regular season wins? What are you basing it off of?
I'm just asking you.
And
what
that's
would
also
your
flawed
answer be?
because if one team gets a bye and the other team doesn't, then they play less games than you in the playoffs, which plays a role on how many playoff wins you have. So it definitely depends.
Isn't that part of the success?
What, playing in a wild card game and getting a win? So that means you get a better playoff record because you win
the fact
a wild card game?
No, I'm saying you had a situation where
In terms of wins and losses, this and that, you want to spit at me? I don't know off the top of my head who had a better 20-year run, the Saints or the Eagles, but this is what I do know. I think the Saints had a way better chance to win the Super Bowl with their team constructed than the Eagles did in the recent years. I look at that team as more of a Super Bowl team than the Eagles were, even though the Eagles were the one to win it in 2017. They were more constructed to do it consistently than we were.
And they ended up with one Super Bowl.
Yeah, so they underachieved.
Yeah, and the Eagles, by the way, in the same time span, have more double-digit win seasons.
That's fine. They also played in the NFC East, and there's so much that plays a role. It's not as simple as, well, they have more regular season wins. Okay, well, that doesn't mean much to me.
But the point that the guy brought up is that the team has no consistency, and I'm saying that's not accurate. They do have consistency. They've been if they're not the best team in the NFC,
to change coaches the way that they have is fair to say that it hasn't been consistent from that angle. The flip-flopping of the coaches over the Chip Kelly, Doug Peterson, Nick Sirianni, that's not consistent in that regard, and I think that's kind of what he was saying.
Okay, 2 questions for you. Number one, I want to know exactly what are you trying to say that the Eagles have underachieved compared to what they should be?
No. I'm not saying that because I don't think I'm saying the Saints did and the Green Bay Packers did.
Okay, because the reason I'm asking is because I feel like what you're saying or what the listeners might be saying watching on Facebook, YouTube, and Twitter or listening to us right now, they may be sitting there saying, like you said, well, the Saints had a better chance. But did they really?
Yes.
Are you sure?
Yes.
Because they went to one NFC championship.
Well, they should have been past that if that wasn't the most egregious call in the history of football. But yes.
But that goes back to what you said. Doesn't it go back to the Eagles that play in the NFC East? Well, Tom Brady is winning championships.
Yeah, sure. But I mean, this was a little bit more. I mean, this is like the worst history call in history of sports. But yes.
Well, I mean, that's subjective. I mean, there's other
sure, it's up there. Well. It's in the top 3.
My point is that are the Saints or the Packers, these teams, really better teams? Or is the optics of them better teams because they're not the team in our backyard? So we don't see all the flaws and the warts, and we don't pick them apart every single game, every single week.
No, I think they're structurally better than the Eagles have been, and they should have won more Super Bowls. I think it's just that simple.
I think a lot of that.
I understand,
right,
but
they didn't.
Okay, so they underachieved. They didn't get the job done.
It's convenient to say they underachieved because you are viewing them as a more consistent franchise. It's an easy thing to say, well, they underachieved, but they're more consistent. I think they're better than them. The Eagles are saying, we've won as many games as you have, and you're saying, well, they played in a worse division. That's subjective to what you think. The last 2 years, this has been a horrible division. The NFC West was horrible for a stretch there of 5 years where they sent a 7-9 team to the playoffs. Seattle won a bunch of games during that time when the Cardinals were horrible. San Francisco was horrible. The Rams were horrible.
Sure, I didn't make it seem like this was the only reason why.
But I'm saying it's all subjective to all the teams. And the Eagles are saying, for as much success that this Seattle's had, New Orleans has had, Green Bay has had, we've been right there with them. And we all have something in common. We've all won one Super Bowl. So there's not one team in this conference other than the Giants. I can't think of another one off the top of my head that have won multiple Super Bowls.
But the way you guys talk about it,
NFC team that has won multiple Super Bowls in recent years.
The way that you guys talk about it, it truly does feel like you give them free passes for losing because, well, they win a lot of regular season games, and that's where
I'm not giving them a free pass.
But it really does come off that way.
I am putting them up against their peers. And okay, it's disappointing that they're not better than their peers, but there's not one peer that is any better than they are.
But that's because one man dominated for so long in some of these divisions. Like the AFC, you get one guy come out every year, but that limits the whole AFC that has teams that can compete just as much as anybody else for Super Bowls.
But, Brodes, if that's the case, then there should be an NFC
But there's
team.
no comparison to
hold
Tom
on.
Brady.
There should be an NFC team then, if based on your definition and what you're trying to say, that should be going there every year.
No, it's not because no one has the Tom Brady. The only reason why that's the case is because of Tom Brady. There's no Tom Bradys that walk into this league and go to 10 Super Bowls. 10 Super Bowls, not 2. But he dominated the AFC
but
for
what
20
does that have to do
years.
with the NFC?
Well, it doesn't. It doesn't. But
nothing.
But you
and
bring up the
teams,
Steelers. You bring up these teams in the AFC.
No, I said the Seahawks, Green Bay, New Orleans. I said the other teams in the NFC, when they stack themselves up against their contemporaries in the NFC, Nobody other than the Giants. The Giants have 2 Super Bowls.
The Giants are 2 for 2.
Nobody else can say that they have any better resume than you do in a 20-year span. No one can say we've gone to 8 Super Bowls and lost 6 of them. Nobody.
There's been no dominant.
There's
force
been
in
no
the
dominant
NFC.
team. Their resume
But that's because
is
I think
just
they
as good as everybody else's. So those teams may have underachieved, and maybe the Eagles underachieved. But of the
that's not
underachievers,
okay, though.
they're the best.
But no, that's not okay. You can't just and that goes back to you're okay with underachieving because other
didn't
guys
say that.
because
Yes,
other
I'm saying,
guys
I don't
underachieve.
think anybody's okay with.
Well, no,
when
it
they
seems
were
like it's
underachieving.
you know what, they're underachieving,
No,
so it's
that's
okay.
not.
But
That's not.
that's how it sounds. Whether you
well,
think
then you
or
need
not.
to clear your hearing.
No, it's not me. I'm not the only one. Trust me. Because that's how it's coming out from you guys. Because other teams underachieve, it's okay if the Eagles underachieve. That's the message.
Well, then you're getting the message incorrect.
Well,
You're
you
not
are
hearing it
also
right.
delivering the message differently.
Listen,
you're hearing what you want to hear.
No, I'm not. I'm hearing exactly what is coming out of your mouth.
The message was that all the teams could have underachieved. Eagles, Saints, Seahawks, Green Bay. Maybe they've all underachieved. But if you were to say, hand me the resume of the best underachiever, they might have all underachieved.
Right.
It's not an excuse for any of them. They all should have done better. But if you were to say, well, then I don't care who the underachievers are. Give me the best one you got. They're going to say, here are the 4 best. And I'm going to guarantee you, part of those resumes is going to have the Philadelphia Eagles in there. Whether the others underachieved, they underachieved, this guy underachieved, that guy underachieved. They all have a
Well, that's unacceptable to me. I don't accept
No one's
that.
saying it's
But you don't
accept
have
it.
to accept
Yeah,
it.
sure,
but it's
you guys
still-
do.
I'm
No,
not
I don't
accepting it.
accept it.
Yes, you
what
do.
I'm saying is that at some point we have to realize that the Philadelphia Eagles are in the same predicament as almost every other NFL team.
No, they're not.
Better. They're not worse.
Right. We're just trying to hold them to a different standard because they're the team that's right here. And that's fine.
And that's what's
it
supposed
doesn't
to
mean
happen.
you can yeah. I'm not accepting of that fact. I'm just telling you this is the reality is as much as we want them to be better, they're actually right there with the best their contemporaries. They haven't pulled away from that pack, which sucks. But if you take a step out of your passion and fandom and actually just look at it from a macro level, you would say, as much as I would like them to be better, they're actually right there with everybody else. And I can't really argue about that unless I want them to be the Patriots.
No, see, that's where I disagree. That's not the only way you can look that way. If you want them to be the Patriots, it's not the only way to look at it.
Well, you find me another team that has multiple Super Bowls and multiple
Well, they
appearances.
underachieved.
And that's fine. I can agree with that. They all underachieved. But guess what? Of all the underachievers, they're right at the top of the list with all the
How are
rest
they
of
at
them.
the top? I don't understand that.
I think I explained it pretty clearly that if you look at the amount of wins they all have, they all are about the same amount of wins. They all won 1 Super Bowl. They all
You can have the same amount of wins and be a different caliber team than the other. One can be more of a Super Bowl contender than the other and still have similar regular season wins.
Well,
It's
that's
very
on
possible.
you to judge. I'm
Sure.
just judging by how many wins they
Right.
all have.
I dive deeper.
That's why you make these things a lot more complicated than they need to be.
No, not really.
5 o'clock hour is brought to you by Bernie Robbins Jewelers. Shop the Valentine's Day sale now at BernieRobbins.com. Coming up on the other side, we'll talk to Frank Close as the Phillies made a couple deals today.
Good way to end things.
There's Frank just kind of like waiting around.
Frank's probably sitting there like, what the hell did I just walk into?
What?
I said, Frank's probably like, what the hell did I just walk into? Brady retweeted the video of him, and he says nothing to see here, just a little avocado tequila, but he like purposely misspelled certain like parts of the words.
What did they do? They all go on boats or something?
So they had the parade, but it was on the water.
So fans just like wrapped around?
Fans were quote unquote socially distanced on the shore, spread out, and they were all on boats, their own boats. And now they're at some central location, and the GM said we're gonna fucking win one next year.
Yeah, because you got Tom Brady. The comments here are pretty funny. Ladies and gentlemen, this is getting wild. Man, that was so fun. I'm sad this is the last half hour.
Here you go. That's a Brady tweet.
Oh, yeah.
Like you can tell he purposely.
Yeah. He was being a jag-off.
Yeah.
David Montgomery deleted his tweet and then had to retweet something about.
Yeah, I sent it to Gil too.
Okay, yeah.
So from 2020 to 2021, New England is number 1, 243 and 93.
I mean 2000 and 2021.
2000.
So New
Pittsburgh
England
is second. There, Jesus Christ. 243 for New England. The next highest win total is 217. 217, 117, and 2. Then Green Bay is 210 and 124.
Mm-hmm.
Indianapolis is next, 208 and 120.
Right. And they also only won one Super Bowl.
Yes.
They lost to the Saints.
Yeah, but that goes back to the AFC conversation, which I think is valid.
But they still got there twice.
Baltimore is 5th at 201 and 135.
Baltimore is 2-0 in the Super Bowl.
Philadelphia is next, 194 at 140.
They got the 2 Super Bowls. They won one. They lost
So in
together.
the NFC, only Green Bay has won more games than them in the last 20 years.
And in the last 20 years, Green Bay only went to 1 Super Bowl. So the Eagles have gone to more Super Bowls than the team with more regular season wins.
But does that kind of defend my point of the regular season wins? I mean, like you can only put so much stock in the regular season wins. I think of it more as
but that's
if
the
you're
point, though, is
because there
you're
could be a
winning all
team that
these regular
wins.
season games. Like the point is, you're a consistent team. You're winning all these regular season games.
Yeah, but you can win regular season games.
All right, let's bring in Frank Close and get a little insight on the Phillies as they make a couple deals over the last couple of weeks here, Brodes. They brought in a bunch of pitchers. See how these guys stack up in the bullpen. Because, Frank, I want to get your take on this because, you know, Brodes, he's the optimist. He thinks that the Phillies can make the playoffs every single year, even if they had that bullpen every single year from last season, which we all know if they had that bullpen every single year, the bullpen probably wouldn't be that bad every single year. Would we agree on that?
No.
You think that well, they did have Workman in it. So that being said, if they just have a better bullpen, Frank, should we start to think that Dave Dombrowski has put together a possible playoff team?
Makes the difference here. The bullpen is going to be it because basically what happened is the Phillies were confronted. All right, do you rebuild when you have JT as a free agent? If you have Didi Gregorius as a free agent? And they kind of took a step back and said, look, I think the best thing going forward is not to rebuild, but see if we get the bullpen right, will that make a difference? And I think that's their strategy this year. And the other thing, too, that was the Achilles heel for the Phillies is besides the bullpen, was the starting rotation. They didn't have any depth. So they've tried to add some starting pitching depth so that the bullpen doesn't have to pitch an entire game like happened several times last year. Remember, that bullpen was really bad, and they also had to pitch some entire games, like 5 of them down the stretch. You can't win games like that. So I think they're trying to roll the dice, see if that offense, which was very good, if you look at the numbers, it was very good, that if you have the better pitching depth, bullpen, starter, that it will make the difference, and that's what they're kind of banking on.
All right, so let's look at their bullpen. They've added a couple arms. Let's see what they've done over the last 2 weeks here, Frank, and kind of get your breakdown on what we might see at spring training with what they now have in the bullpen.
So certainly Archie Bradley is a solid signing. We've talked about that one before. The Phillies get somebody who has closed, who has pitched at the back of the bullpen. And the Phillies really needed to add one more veteran beyond that, and they added it today in Brandon Kinsler. And Kinsler, I was actually surprised he settled for the minor league deal, but there might be some handshake agreement behind the scenes that he's a good bet to make the team. As I think Ken Rosenthal tweeted today that he was the best reliever on the Marlins last year and the best reliever on the Cubs the year before that. So I'm kind of surprised he had to take a minor league deal, but clearly Kinsler's confident he's going to make this bullpen, and the Phillies probably are as well. And when you have those two guys with Hector Neris, who's had his moments that haven't been wonderful, but has been mostly solid, then you're starting to feel a lot better about that. And then you have the young guys that looked really promising last year, Jojo Romero and also Connor Brogdon. Then you bring in a couple others in the mix that might be something, the Jose Alvarados and the Sean Coonrods, and they're hoping that they have the makings of it certainly should be better than, everything's got to be better than last year, right?
Is there someone to you that will definitely close? Like you are the closer, or do you think they kind of have to figure that out as the season starts?
I think that's kind of up in the air. Certainly Hector Neris hasn't been a lockdown closer the last couple of years. In fact, when they traded for the aforementioned Brandon Workman, Workman became closer, and he quickly became not the closer. So Neris has that experience. When Neris is on, he's on. When he's not, he's not. So I think they're going to open-minded in that. Certainly Bradley has closed and Kinsler has closed. Kinsler was the longtime closer for the Minnesota Twins, and it's been very, very good in the major leagues as a closer. So at least they have some options, and I don't think they need to commit to any of them at the moment, but you have some options.
Give us your take on they signed Didi today, and then Girardi came out and said Segura's going to play second. So what happens to Kingery? Is you have a three-headed monster in center field? Is he just kind of the jack of all trades, master of none? What do we see with that situation?
So I would say they haven't decided. There's still the chance there could be a designated hitter, which is the funny thing in all of this, right? So if that happens, well, then obviously he's the extra man, I think. Then I think you might see Rhys Hoskins DHing a lot. You might see Alec Boehm playing a lot of first base, and then Segura can bounce between second and third. But I think if there is no DH, then you kind of have Kingery as your super utility guy like he used to be. And then, you know what? Let's face it. Last year, one of the strengths the Phillies had was that DH position because people kind of moved in and out of it. They didn't have a dedicated DH, and Kingery sort of at least helps them sort of navigate through a kind of mixing in and mixing out of players because he's so versatile. Guys are going to need their days off. Andrew McCutchen's going to need his days off, which could mean Kingery plays center and Adam Hasty plays left. You're going to need some days off for Rhys Hoskins, perhaps coming off surgery. So I think having a Kingery is very, very good because you can kind of plug them in almost anywhere, get the guys their days that they used to have last year as a designated hitter. So DH, no DH, having somebody that versatile is very, very helpful.
Should we be optimistic about Matt Moore and Anderson in this starting rotation? Or are they guys that might be able to be in the bullpen, as we were kind of just talking about? Can they do relieving if maybe Spencer Howard gets called up? Like, what is their role is going to be?
I would say right now the two of them kind of have the inside edge to start. They signed major league deals. I think the thing about Vince Velasquez, I'm still surprised they brought him back for $4 million. I really thought they could have used that $4 million elsewhere. And you see the type of money some of these guys are getting at the end of the offseason, and it's less than $4 million, right? I mean, they signed two other starters for less than that to major league deals. So you're probably going to see Velasquez in the bullpen. I think those two are going to be the starters. There's still some kind of talk about a 6-man rotation, and I'm not a fan of 6-man rotations because that's one fewer reliever you have. But I think this year the hard part is nobody pitched a lot last year. And I think the worry is if you kind of let people loose every fifth day, their stamina is not going to be what it was in previous years because they just didn't pitch enough last year. So you're probably going to need more than 5 starters no matter what. And I think you feel a heck of a lot better if Vince Velasquez is not one of the guys you're counting on per se and maybe only filling in. And Spencer Howard, you know what? He's had a cup of coffee. He's had a couple injuries even along the way. If there's no pressure to put him into the major league rotation right away. And if he's not ready, if you don't like what you see, you don't need to pitch him. If he's pitching really well, he bumps one of those guys to the bullpen. And I think that's something as a luxury. If they just counted on Spencer Howard to be in this starting rotation, they would regret it later.
Frank Close covers the Phillies, 97.3 ESPN.com, and they made a couple deals today. One was with Matt Joyce. I'm imagining he's kind of replacing Jay Bruce.
Yeah, I would say that's the best slot to kind of put him in. He'll be a guy that might play some left field. Again, if he makes the team, it's a minor league deal. A lot depends on how other dominoes fall, but if he's on your roster, you might play some left field when Andrew McCutchen has the day off. That's probably his role, and then a left-handed pinch hitter off the bench. You're not going to see him start in right, of course, because Harper's there, and he's not really a candidate to play any center field. So he's going to be probably a backup in left field if you want to give Andrew McCutchen a day off against a tough righty. Again, keep those knees healthy. That's the guy you put in. Or you need a pinch hitter from the left side. They don't really have anybody else, so he's it.
With Rhys Hoskins, last year he batted second a lot, and Gill and I were going back and forth on it. Well, he walked a lot, and Bryce Harper was behind him, but it's almost as if he was looking for the walks. Do you think that the 2-hole is a spot for him, really, for this upcoming season?
I'm not a fan of that. I think he's too slow. So yeah. So I mean, he'll clog the bases. I mean, maybe he's stopping at third base when Bryce Harper's stopping at second because he couldn't get to third base. So he's just too slow for me to have that role. I think we really need to see what you have with Hoskins once he's healthy. They say he's going to be ready for spring training. That's the last thing we've heard. I haven't heard any updates lately. There's a chance that he could start off a little bit slower, but I don't see the point of having somebody who's that slow on the base pass batting second. I would rather see I'd rather see Gene Segura there. I'd rather see fill in the blank. I mean, almost anybody.
Yeah, I'm not a big fan of. We kind of talked about him hitting in that 2-hole either when they put Rhys Hoskins in that 2-hole. But it'll be interesting. What is his future looking like in terms of being ready for opening day?
Yeah, that seems to be the wild card because when they announced that he had as much as 6 months worth of recovery ahead of him, that was basically 6 months from opening day. So I think we're going to need to wait and see when we get into spring training in a week. A week from today, pitchers and catchers, and then the first full squad workout the following Monday, the 22nd. When he reports, I think we'll know better. Is he that close to being ready, or is he going to need some more time? Because if he needs the full 6 months, well, that means he's not playing any preseason games and he's starting the year on the DL. But it was optimistic last we heard, but there's still a chance that he's not ready opening day.
All right, Frank. Obviously, what do we know about spring training? Is everything going to be on time? Is that all kind of settled now with? Do they have a date for pitchers and catchers and all that stuff?
Yeah, so the pitchers and catchers are definitely reporting a week from today, which is the 17th. The full squad workout remains scheduled for the 22nd. What we don't know now is what the game schedule is going to be. Now, they released a spring training schedule a long time ago, but they haven't sold a single ticket, and they haven't made any announcements as to what's happening with that. We don't know if there's going to be fans in the stands, a limited number of fans in the stands. I heard some people worry about the revenue at 25% isn't worth it having fans. So the most recent thing reported by Matt Gill and by Ken Rosenthal, The Athletic, was they're going to kind of redo that schedule. Focus on putting teams mostly against their local teams. So you'll see the Phillies play the Blue Jays a lot. You'll see them play the Yankees a lot because Dunedin and Tampa are close by. Probably the Detroit Tigers are in that mix. They're going to try to minimize their travel. But interestingly, Mike. I have a plan to go down there to be there for the opener. I don't know if that opener is going to be
Right.
hit right at I almost said Bright House Spectrum Field, excuse me, or not. I mean, does the schedule getting changed around mean they're going to open somewhere else? I don't know that information yet, but I've got a flight, but I'll show up and see what happens.
I know, and I put in for your spring training credentials. So, at least they're telling us to apply for them right now. That's all.
That's a good sign, right?
Yes. This will be the second year in a row, though, that I'm not going to be down there because, it just don't. Apparently, they're letting fans in there, right?
Well, they haven't said that. There's some talk of 25%, but I've also heard that with the revenue splits that go to the city of Clearwater and stuff, that there might not be a financial incentive to even bother. They're definitely not letting fans go to workouts this year. That is one thing that the media update said, is that they're going to close it off, and that will be open to media only. So we'll see. I mean, outdoors, warm weather, distance, masks. Could they make it work? Maybe. Major League Baseball tried to push things back a little bit just so that more people would be vaccinated, and including the players. And the players weren't willing to do that. I mentioned that the effects of last year. A lot of them were trying to get into a rhythm to play. They didn't want to be disrupted any further. So it's getting very, very close to the time for the first game. The first game is scheduled right now for Saturday the 27th, and whether they play it on that exact day, whether they play it in Clearwater or another local city like Tampa, Dunedin, or Lakeland, that remains to be seen.
All right, Frank Close, 97.3 ESPN.com, at Frank Close. And, of course, as he said, a week from now, Phillies are heading down, and we'll be all over the Phils this year on 97.3 ESPN. All right, Frank, thanks, man.
Good to talk to you guys.
Absolutely. As always, Frank Close, like August, appeared via the Boardwalk Honda hotline. And don't forget, coming up, game night tonight. No games tonight, but Josh still got a good show for you. Dave Weinberg, of course. Dave thinks that Nick Foles should come back.
I saw that. I saw him actually tweet that. I was laughing. I can't wait to hear
I love you, Dave,
his
but
response.
come on, man.
Yeah, I can't wait to hear the response tonight.
Holy moly.
By the way, this deal that DraftKings has for UFC 258 is absolutely outrageous. DraftKings is giving you 100-1 odds that either fighter in the title fight will land a punch. That's right, 100-1 odds. Download the DraftKings Sportsbook app right now and use promo code 973 when you sign up. Must be 21 or older. New Jersey, only gambling problem, call 1-800-GAMBLER. I'm laughing because I see what you popped up on the screen.
Yeah, a lot of people apparently enjoyed our spat.
Good. I loved it too. It's the beauty of this thing. They really did. They wanted us to keep going during the break. We should have gave them one. We should have gave the people what they wanted.
Connor says, I'm sad this is the last half hour. I'm sure there will be some other topic that we don't agree on, Connor, coming up at some point.
Yeah. I mean, look, it just happens naturally. You just start screaming. It's great stuff, though.
By the way, I did do a little research in the break. The Eagles have the 6th most wins in the last 20 years.
Yeah, the way I see it, though, is if 6 people murdered somebody and you were part of that stick, well, they did it. That's sort of like how I feel you're giving me that information. Well, because other teams underachieve, it's okay to underachieve.
I don't care about the other.
6 people murdered someone. Well, I just did what other people did.
I'm saying the guy who said that they were not consistent, I'm saying they have a top 6 record in the entire NFL over a 20-year span. It's hard to say that that's been disappointing. You could say I'm disappointed with the results of those 20 years, but to say that in those 20 years, there's only 5 teams that have a better record than them, I don't know. I mean, if you want them to be better than one of those 5, I can understand you being very upset. I can, again, be upset with the results of those 20 seasons. But if I take a step back and say, over those 20 years, only 5 teams that have more wins than me, maybe I don't know. But those 5 teams are, by the way, Baltimore, Indianapolis, Green Bay, Pittsburgh, and the Patriots. Philadelphia is 6th. So those 5, then Philadelphia is the number 6 team. 194, 140, and 2. By the way, the next team behind them, the New Orleans Saints, 195 and 141. The Seattle Seahawks. So the Eagles are actually the second best team in the NFC over that 20-year span. We'll be back with 5. All right, 5 questions, wrapping up a Wednesday show. Very spirited in the last hour.
That's how it should be.
Well, I'm old. I can't keep up that level of energy.
Have a coffee. You get a little coffee in you. All right, we'll start here. Rapid fire. Are you watching Luka and Trae Young? I mean, it's highly anticipated. This is one hell of a matchup.
Today's Wednesday, right?
Yeah. I mean, ESPN's got the countdown going.
Yeah, I'm probably out.
Yeah, I don't blame you there.
No, never mind.
No. Any interest in the Australian Open at all for tennis or not?
No, Zippo.
Not at all? You never give it a
I'm not a hardcourt guy. I like the...
Come on. You're not a hardcourt guy? You got to be kidding me. That's good. Are you excited for UFC?
Actually, it's Clay, isn't it?
No, Clay's the French Open.
Oh, geez.
Yeah. Come on. Get your courts
Sorry.
right.
Oh, I thought the U.S. Open was the hardcourt.
Oh, man. Excited for Usman fight UFC 258?
I am. Usman's going to be on with Josh on Friday night.
That's exciting. Can't wait to hear that. Anything on the college basketball schedule tonight that intrigues you / Geoff?
What?
Anything on the college basketball schedule that intrigues you / Geoff?
I haven't looked yet.
Okay.
Normally, I'll look after the show's over.
All right. Was that 4? I'm bad at math. What are you watching tonight?
You are bad at math.
What are you watching tonight? You shut your mouth.
My feet are killing me. Have a great night.